Hey guys, what's up? Hope everyone's having a great day. I hope all is well in your world. Okay, today we're taking a look at Erin Felati's deposition. It's going to be another long one, so do whatever you need to do, but I'm here. I'm here doing it. Okay, so this was February 4th, 2022. Who do we got? We got for Johnny, we have Jessica, Camille, and Ben. And for Ambi Pants, we have Adam Nadelhaft and not Lainey Pants. For Erin, we have Robert McKenna, and Johnny is also present. I do understand my full hypocrisy where I'm like, damn you, Amber, intimidating all the witnesses during their deposition. And when Johnny rocks up, I'm like, good. You just sit there and you just let them lie right to your face. But we'll see what Erin has to say for herself. Okay, so it starts off, the deposition starts with Mr. Nadelhaft on behalf of Ambi Pants. So he said, "Good morning, my name is Adam Nadelhaft. I'm here with Clarissa Pendato, as I just mentioned. We represent Amber Heard. And Amber and I and Clarissa, thank you for taking your time with us today. And can you please provide us with your full name?" Erin Felati. "And is Boerum your maiden name?" Erin, correct. "When did you become Erin Felati?" Erin, oh my God, my husband's going to kill me. 2017? It's usually the husband that forgets their anniversary. Erin, I know. So Boerum was your name, your last name in 2014 to 2016 timeframe, correct? Erin, correct. "And what's your address, either work or home?" Mr. McKenna on behalf of Erin, so she can be contacted through counsel. Adam, so she will not be giving her home address. Adam, she can give her work address. I'm just trying to establish that she's in California as opposed to Virginia. Mr. McKenna, well, you can ask her that question. Mr. Nadelhaft, okay. Mr. McKenna, and you can ask me that question, and the answer will be yes. We're in California. She's represented by counsel, and she's not going to give you her home address for privacy reasons. Adam, and that's fine. That's fine. You live in California, correct? Erin, yes, that's correct. You don't live in Virginia, correct? Erin, correct. And you don't work in Virginia, correct? Erin, correct. Okay, thank you. Have you ever been deposed before? Erin, nope. Okay, so I'm going to start off by asking you a series of questions. If at any time you don't understand my question, please let me know. Does that make sense? Erin, yes. If you do not hear me, given that we're over Zoom, please let me know and I'll repeat the question. Does that make sense? Erin, yes. As you're doing, please answer with words like yes or no rather than or aha, so we can know what you mean. Does that make sense? Erin, yes. Okay, and if you answer my question, it will be assumed that you understand the question and that you heard the question. Does that make sense? Erin, yes. Okay, and if you need to take a break, just let me know. She said yes. Okay, given that we're not in the same room and that we're over Zoom, do you have any notes or documents that are in front of you or on your computer that you're looking at today? Erin, yes. I have a document that was submitted that were requested as well. I have some other documents in front of me that I did not personally submit. Mr. McKenna, so the exhibits that were sent over a couple of days ago is what she has in front of her. Mr. Nadelhaft, Robert, what documents were submitted a couple of days ago? I never received anything. Mr. McKenna, somebody sent. I just got a set of records from someone. Jessica, was it from you? Jessica, no, not us. I uploaded documents this morning. Mr. McKenna, I would presume it was some lawyer sent exhibits that were. Miss Court Reporter, did you get some pre-marked exhibits to the deposition? The reporter, we did, but we didn't share them. We didn't share them with anybody. Mr. McKenna, who did you get them from? The reporter, Catherine? And then the AV technician, we received exhibits from both sides, from both parties. Mr. Nadelhaft, okay, let me ask you this. The document that you received from counsel, that are markings at the bottom of the document, like that indicate, what are they? Mr. McKenna, these are emails, text messages. I see a photograph. Mr. Nadelhaft, are there Bates numbers on them? Mr. McKenna, yeah, the first page is lower right hand K as in Cali 182 is the Bates stamp. Mr. Nadelhaft, okay, and you don't know who you received those from? Mr. McKenna, I mean, I can figure it out, but it's really mind-blowing at this point that no one on this call happens to know who sent us these records. So, Mr. Nadelhaft, yeah. Mr. McKenna, if you want me to make some time to figure it out, I'll figure it out. Mr. Nadelhaft, it's kind of mind-blowing to me because I didn't that's fine. We'll move on. I know I didn't. No one from our side sent you anything. And okay, that's fine. We'll move on. So you have these documents in front of you, and then you have some additional documents. That's what you said? Mr. McKenna, just those documents, what she said. Within these documents, that were sent to us were documents she gave to her former lawyers at Gordon Reese, and also documents that she did not get but were included in the stack that she's unfamiliar with. So some of them are documents that she had produced under prior deposition notices. Some of them were sent she's never really seen before. Mr. Nadelhaft, okay. I mean, if you can look at where you got them from during a break or something, I would appreciate it. Mr. McKenna, all right, hold on a sec. I'll send an email. Mr. Nadelhaft, so, Ms. Felati, did you review those documents in preparation for your deposition? Erin, I reviewed some documents in preparation. What type of documents did you review? Erin, the ones that I previously submitted in reference to the subpoenas I received. And those were the text messages and other types, those nurse notes, etc.? Erin, that's correct. Okay, have you spoken or communicated with Mr. Depp or anyone on his behalf in preparation for your deposition? Erin, I don't believe so. Don't recall. Have you communicated in writing with Mr. Depp or anyone on his behalf in preparation for your deposition? Erin, no. Have you spoken with Mr. Depp at any of his attorneys during this time relating to the case or the UK matter? Erin, yes. Who did you speak to? Erin, Camille. When did you? And that's Camille Vasquez. Yeah? Erin, yes. When did you speak with Camille Vasquez approximately? Erin, I don't recall the dates. I feel like maybe early to mid 2021, but that would be my best guess. And what did you discuss with Miss Vasquez? Erin, I don't recall specifics, but I remember talking about they wanted to provide a subpoena as well as to do a deposition. Do you recall how long the conversation was? Erin, no. Was this a conversation? Erin, yes, a phone call. Okay, do you recall if it was a long or a short call? Erin, I don't recall. I was busy with my kids. Okay, all right. Did you speak with Miss Vasquez at any other time other than the early mid to 2021 time? Erin, I don't recall speaking to her prior to that time. Okay, did you speak to Miss Vasquez at any other time after that conversation? Erin, yes, briefly. When this deposition was being scheduled because there was, I think, scheduling uncertainties. And what was the uncertainties that you recall? Erin, I don't know if it was your firm. Someone had provided a November date that was not going to work, and I think no one was on the same page. Okay, did you speak regarding any substance of anything that occurred with Mr. Depp and Amber Heard with Miss Vasquez in this later time frame? Erin, I just don't recall the details of our conversation. I just remember discussing a subpoena and a deposition. Mr. McKenna, okay, and just for a moment, we got an email on February 2nd at 9:50 a.m. from a Diane Cutting, who was a legal secretary at Gordon Reese, saying, attached, please find Zoom info and exhibit links for the deposition of Erin Boerum, scheduled for February 4th, 2022 at 9:30 a.m. And attached to the email were links that had the exhibits that were printed out and gave to the deponent. Mr. Nadelhaft, okay, all right. I think there was, okay, so it's fine. I think that's what happened. Just so everyone knows, I think that appears that probably was documents that either I or someone from Mr. Depp's team had already uploaded as potential exhibits. So that's fine. Mr. McKenna, okay, I'm glad we cleared that up. The other thing I want to clear up, Adam, I don't know if you're aware of this, but your firm and one of your partners have previously represented my client in this action? Mr. Nadelhaft, yeah, that's why they're not here. It's not my firm, but the other, Gordon Reese. They're not here, and yeah, I was aware of that. Mr. McKenna, okay, I just want to make sure you're aware. Mr. Nadelhaft, no, Mr. McKenna, I don't think the state of California makes a distinction between which Gordon Reese office you're in. Mr. Nadelhaft, I'm not with Gordon Reese, so. Mr. McKenna, well then, what is Mr. Nadelhaft? That's a different firm. I'm with Charleston, Bredhoff, Cohen and Brown. Adam Nadelhaft, different firm. Mr. McKenna, so you were never with Gordon Reese? Mr. Nadelhaft, correct. Mr. McKenna, okay. It did not make sense to me because I think the subpoena may have come from Gordon Reese, but I'm not with Gordon Reese, nor is Camille, nor is anyone in this deposition. Mr. McKenna, yeah, I don't know if that's a distinction with or without a difference, but Camille, well, hi, this is Camille Vasquez. Just let me clear this up. Gordon Reese does represent Amber Heard in this matter, so Nadelhaft, right? I'm not denying that. I was just saying that I'm not with Camille. I know, but you didn't state on the record, so let me state on the record. Camille, Gordon Reese is counsel for record for Amber Heard in California. Nadelhaft, agreed. Mr. McKenna, okay, so Camille, you're with Gordon Reese? Nadelhaft, nope. Jessica, no, Camille is at my firm, Boerum Roundrick, and we represent Mr. Depp. Mr. McKenna, okay, so I'm at a loss here. Is Gordon Reese on this call? Camille, nope. Mr. McKenna, okay, so that maybe explains why nobody here knew why these exhibits came through. All right. I just wasn't aware if whoever representing Miss Heard at Gordon Reese had previously represented this deponent in this very matter, and I have not seen a conflict waiver signed by my client, so I'm hoping to at some point to get that. Nadelhaft, okay. Camille, we would insist on that. We agree with you on that. I mean, I was the one who discovered that Gordon Reese represented both your client and Miss Heard, so she promptly got different counsel, and Gordon Reese still represents Amber in this matter, so I would agree that, so that's my 2 cents. Mr. McKenna, I'm talking about my client having signed a written waiver. I don't think that's discoverable, Adam, but since you have some connection with Gordon Reese, please send me a copy because my client does not have a copy of that document. Nadelhaft, I can look into that. McKenna, thank you. All right, go ahead. Mr. Nadelhaft, do you recall who your lawyer was with Gordon Reese? Erin, my primary attorney, there was 2 involved. I'm sorry, I don't remember the woman's name who was based out of Virginia. The one based out of Southern California was Philip Lowe. Okay, thank you. Do you recall any other conversation with Ms. Vasquez that you haven't already testified to? Erin, yes, I remember texting. I don't recall the details of that. I think it was probably in response to what we had previously spoken to, is setting up counsel and deposition. And was the texting in the 2021, late 2021 timeframe? Erin, I believe so. Have you communicated with anybody else about Mr. Depp's counsel other than Ms. Vasquez? Erin, not that I recall. Oh, excuse me. I do. I don't remember his name, so I'm so sorry. I feel like I spoke with Adam. I don't know his last name. Did you speak or communicate with Adam Waldman? Erin, perhaps. I don't recall his last name. Okay, and do you recall when that occurred? Erin, that would have been about 2019 because I had a newborn at the time, so maybe May, June, July, something like that, 2019? Nadelhaft. And Catherine, can you pull up attachment 28? It's Felati 1. Miss Felati, I'm showing you what's been marked as Felati 1. Do you see that in front of you? Erin, I do. Right, and you can, if you'd like to look, you can take a look through it. I mean, I'll show you the whole thing. Mr. McKenna, is there some reason why this wasn't part of the records that you guys sent over? Nadelhaft, we weren't intending to send over records. That was a mistake. Mr. McKenna, it's actually considered good form in the state of California to share these documents beforehand, but so be it. Nadelhaft, this document was also produced yesterday, so I didn't have it. Mr. McKenna, all right, I'll accept that excuse for this document. Nadelhaft, well, and again, we weren't planning on sending any documents, so I'm glad we got to see them, but that wasn't our intention. So, Nadelhaft, and there is a text exchange between you and Mr. Waldman. Erin, it appears so. Okay, and do you recall speaking to Mr. Waldman at all? Erin, yes. Do you recall what you spoke to Adam Waldman about? Erin, I do not. I have a vague memory of speaking to him, and I do remember that I had a newborn, so I was incredibly sleep deprived, and my memory is not good from that time. And do you recall that when you were communicating with Mr. Waldman was Mr. Depp's attorney? Erin, yes. Did Mr. Waldman ever ask you to provide any declaration? Erin, can you tell me what that means? Did Mr. Waldman ever ask you to provide any sort of written statement? Erin, I don't know. I don't remember. Okay, do you recall how many times you spoke with Mr. Waldman? Erin, no. Okay. Miss Felati, you're a trained nurse, is that correct? Erin, that's correct. Do you have any specialties? Erin, well, I haven't been working, like I used to, but previously I was trained in addictions and mental health. And when you say addictions, are those specific types of addictions that you were trained in? Erin, no, but I primarily worked with chemical dependency. And where did you receive your training for addiction mental health? Erin, different employment places, and then I became a certified registered addictions nurse. What training did you need to become a certified registered addictions nurse? Erin, I don't recall the exact requirements, but it's many hours per year and also testing that is required. And did you go to specific school for that? Erin, I have a nursing degree. Where did you get your nursing degree from? Erin, University of Maryland School of Nursing. And when did you get your degree from the University of Maryland? Erin, 2005. And how long have you been practicing nurse? Erin, I was active maybe 2005 and 6, and I would say up until approximately 2016-17. And what happened to stop you from being an active nurse in 2016-17? Erin, babies, family. So you currently, I don't want to say not working because I know I have a wife and kids too. So you're working currently as stay-at-home mom, working as a stay-at-home mom? Erin, correct. And you've been working as a stay-at-home mom since approximately 2016, 17? Erin, correct. When were you at the University of Maryland, correct? Erin, yes, I have a nursing degree and a psychology degree. Okay, any specialty in psychology? Erin, no, just a Bachelor of Arts, psychology. And when you were at the University of Maryland, was that you were physically in Maryland? Erin, correct. You're now in Los Angeles. Erin, in the Los Angeles area. Right, okay, when did you move out of the LA area approximately? Erin, approximately late 2005. So in all your time as practicing nurse, you were practicing in LA area. Erin, mostly it was, I used to travel a lot, so we were based in Southern California, but it wasn't always present in Southern California. And when you say we were based in Southern California, who is this we you're referring to? Erin, well, the different companies I worked for. Okay, and you know who Dr. David Kipper is, correct? Erin, that's correct. Did you work for Dr. Kipper? Erin, not directly, but he would hire the agency I provided nursing services for, which was Turning Point, I believe. So I worked under his guidance, but not specifically for him. Most of the time, there would have been times where I worked specifically for him. So you worked for a company called Turning Point. Erin, I might have not got the exact. I know the name has changed, but I believe it was Turning Point Nursing Services. I might not be in existence anymore. Not sure. Okay, when did you start working for Turning Point Nursing Services, or whatever the name of the company was? Erin, I don't recall. My best guess would be somewhere between 2007 or 8. And when did you start to begin to do any work for Dr. Kipper? Erin, I believe 2014. And what were the circumstances that started you working for Dr. Kipper in 2014? Erin, if I recall correctly, it would be for services for Ms. Heard. And can you explain, if you recall, how it worked that Dr. Kipper hired you for services for working for Amber Heard? Erin, could you clarify what you mean by that? Sure. Did you have to interview with someone in Dr. Kipper's office to begin working with him in 2014? Erin, did I interview in Dr. Kipper's office? No, not necessarily did you interview in his office. How did you come to be that you started working for Dr. Kipper for Amber Heard? Erin, through my acquaintance and superior, Debbie Lloyd, who is the owner, or perhaps was the owner, of Turning Point Nursing. So Debbie Lloyd is the owner of Turning Point Nursing, or whatever you believe is to be called. Erin, at that time, correct. Right. When did you and Debbie Lloyd, the owner, when you first joined, was Debbie Lloyd the owner when you first joined Turning Point Nursing? Erin, yes. And when was that again that you joined Turning Point Nursing? Erin, like I said, I don't remember the exact dates. My best guess would be 2007 or 2008. And would you be able to were you considered a contract nurse? Erin, that's correct. Independent contractor is how our relationship was. So you were in doing work for Dr. Kipper through Turning Point Services. You were paid by Turning Point? Erin, yes. And Turning Point, if you know, would have been paid by Dr. Kipper, correct? Erin, I don't know. Okay, how long had Miss Lloyd been working for Dr. Kipper? Erin, I really don't know. I'm sorry. Are you speaking to reference to this case? No, for any patients. Erin, I don't know. Okay, how long had Miss Lloyd been working for Dr. Kipper in reference to either Mr. Depp or Amber Heard? Erin, I don't recall, but it was sometime within the year 2014, I believe. Do you recall if Turning Point and or Debbie Lloyd had been doing any work with Dr. Kipper before work for Mr. Depp or Amber Heard? Erin, I don't know. And why do you recall what Miss Lloyd told you about the assignment for working for Amber Heard? Erin, I don't remember exact conversations. Are you asking me something specifically? What did you understand your role was going to be for Amber Heard? Erin, oh, I see. 1 second. Mr. Nadelhaft, what are you looking at? Mr. McKenna, hold on. Are you withdrawing the question and asking her what she's looking at? Or would you like her to answer the question and then you can ask her what she's looking at? Because the record is going to make no sense with the way it is just like this. Nadelhaft, Robert, I appreciate you. I appreciate it. What are you looking at? Mr. McKenna, so this is a new question. Go ahead, answer the question. Erin, my nursing notes from 2014. Okay, I think it will be easier when I'm going to put up nursing notes. I promise you that. So we're going to look through them. And if you need to look through them on paper rather than a computer, we can do that. Did you just look at your nursing notes to determine what your role was in care of Amber Heard? Erin, yeah. I looked just briefly to see if it could jog my memory. And did it jog your memory of anything of what your role was? Erin, I just have a vague sense that my role was to provide personal nursing care for Miss Heard and also provide assistance with medication administration and, like emotional support. Do you know how many nurses worked for Turning Point in 2014 timeframe? Erin, I do not. I believe you said that you had worked at some point for Dr. Kipper directly, is that right? Erin, throughout the years, I've done projects not related to Mr. Depp or Miss Heard, directly with Dr. Kipper. And when were those times? You don't have to give me the patients. I'm not looking for client information, just the dates. Erin, I don't know the exact dates, but I would make the assumption sometime between 2014, 2016 to 17. When working for clients, did you ever receive tips from clients, financial tips? I mean, like you give a waiter? Mr. McKenna, I mean, if it relates to Amber or Johnny, that theoretically is discoverable, but her conversations with HIPAA protected patients is not something that she's going to discuss beyond the two that are parties to this litigation. Nadelhaft, I'm not asking for any personal information or of any patient or any person. I'm asking if she's ever received any financial tips from anybody, any of her patients. That doesn't reveal any sort of HIPAA information. Mr. McKenna, as it relates to the two parties in this action, that's a fair question to ask. I'll instruct her not to answer as to any of her other patients. Nadelhaft, you're following your counsel's instruction? Erin, yes. Okay, have you ever received any financial money? Have you ever received any money from Mr. Depp? Mr. McKenna, that's a different question. Nadelhaft, I know it's a different question. I'm asking a different question. I can ask that. Mr. McKenna, yeah, you can, but understand she's not a professional at the way lawyers ask questions. So you're asking her now whether she received any compensation of any kind from Mr. Depp. If you know, you can answer the question. Erin, no. Have you ever received any gifts from Mr. Depp at any time? Erin, not that I recall. Have you received any money from Amber Heard at any time? Erin, no, because Amber didn't have any money. Have you ever received any gifts from Amber Heard at any time? Erin, not that I can recall, except for maybe emotional abuse. And was Turning Point your last employment before you had children? Erin, I believe so. Can you recall when the last time you communicated with Dr. Kipper? Erin, maybe a few weeks ago. And did you communicate with Dr. Kipper at all about this case? Erin, not at that time. Have you communicated with Dr. Kipper about this case? Erin, yes. When did you communicate with Dr. Kipper about this case? Erin, in what respect? Any? Erin, I don't recall when his deposition was, but you probably know better than I. But when he was scheduled for his deposition, I was made aware that he was scheduled for his deposition. And did you speak to Dr. Kipper at all about his deposition after he was deposed? Erin, I'm sorry. Could you repeat the question? Let me ask you again. If I can remember what I asked you, did you speak to Dr. Kipper at all after his deposition about his deposition? Erin, yes. What did you discuss? Erin, as I recall, is extremely vague because we got sidetracked and started talking about personal things. I do remember him just saying it was a long day in a deposition. Did you discuss any substance as it relates to Mr. Depp or Amber Heard in regarding his Dr. Kipper's deposition? Erin, I just don't remember the exact details of it. The one thing I do remember is him repeating, it's a long day. Be prepared for that. Other than talking to Dr. Kipper about his deposition, have you spoken to Dr. Kipper at all regarding any issues of this litigation or the UK litigation? Erin, I don't recall, but I'm assuming yes. And do you recall anything you discussed with Dr. Kipper at any time regarding this litigation or the UK litigation? Erin, I don't recall specifics. Anything in general? Erin, I'm sorry, my memory is pretty poor. I know nothing. I would assume we just probably had conversations as to, I do remember talking to him that I received a subpoena because I had received a subpoena, but other than specifics, I just don't recall. And do you still speak with Miss Lloyd? Erin, occasionally. It's been a while. When was the last time you spoke to Miss Lloyd? Erin, my best get was to be sometime in the past 6 to 12 months in reference to a different case. Do you recall if you spoke to Miss Lloyd at all about this litigation? Erin, yep. Do you recall when you spoke to Miss Lloyd about this litigation? Erin, I don't remember exact dates. Do you recall what you discussed with Miss Lloyd? Erin, I remember discussing when I received my first subpoena. I forgot when that was, thinking 2019, and I'm assuming As with Dr. Kipper, we probably touched base through the years, but I don't remember specifics. Do you know what Miss Lloyd does now? Erin, no. In terms of employment, I do not. Do you know if she still owns that company, Turning Point? Erin, I don't know. Did any other nurse work with Dr. Kipper during that 2014 to 2016 timeframe that you were working with Amber and Mr. Depp? Erin, Adam, are you asking me, did any nurses work with Mr. Depp or Miss Heard, or are you speaking in general with Dr. Kipper? That's a good question. Do you know if there were any other nurses that worked in Dr. Kipper's office or anyone during that 2014 to 2016 timeframe? Erin, yes, I know his office nurse. I don't know of others. Do you recall the name of his office nurse? Erin, her last name, oh my goodness, I can't remember her last name. Valentina? Okay, and what type of work did Valentina do as compared to you and Miss Lloyd? Erin, she worked in the office of Dr. Kipper's nurse, so I don't know all her duties. And when you were working for Amber, working for Dr. Kipper, would you go to Dr. Kipper's office? Erin, yes. I've been to his office in relation to Miss Heard. But would you have been in Dr. Kipper's office often as it relates to Amber or Mr. Depp? Erin, no. Where was most of your work done for Miss Heard and Mr. Depp? Erin, wherever they were staying is where the majority of the work was done. Does Debbie Lloyd have a speciality at all in addiction care? Erin, that would probably be best question for her, but I believe so. Do you know if your specialties in addiction care and mental health issues was a reason for you working with Mr. Depp and Amber Heard? Erin, that might be a question for Dr. Kipper, but I would believe, or I would assume, that my training would be helpful. Do you know who Monroe Tinker is? Erin, sorry, excuse me, say that again? Monroe Tinker, do you know who Monroe Tinker is? Erin, oh, I might get his role incorrect, but I believe he is a nurse practitioner that worked either for or with Dr. Kipper at some point, but it's been many years, so I don't remember. I assume you haven't spoken to Mr. Tinker in a long time? Erin, that's correct. Do you know who Lisa Bean is? Erin, can you say that name again? Lisa Bean. Erin, yes, she worked in Dr. Kipper's office at some point, but again, that's been many years. And do you recall what Lisa Bean's role was at Dr. Kipper's office? Erin, not exactly, perhaps receptionist, but I don't know her full duties. Do you know who Dr. Cowan is? Erin, not personally, but I believe he was a therapist with Miss Heard, I think. In your role as a nurse for Miss Heard, did you communicate at all with Dr. Cowan when you were treating Amber Heard? Erin, yeah, I don't remember. Do you know who Dr. Alan Blaustein is? Erin, that name does not sound familiar to me. Do you know who Dr. Laurel Anderson is? Erin, that name does not sound familiar. And Dr. Kipper treated Mr. Depp, correct? Erin, that's correct. Did Mr. Depp was a concierge patient, is that right? Erin, I don't know if there's a specific relationship. Adam, do you know what a concierge patient is as it relates to Dr. Kipper's care? Erin, I don't know the specifics of that. Okay, do you know if Mr. Depp was paying for Dr. Kipper's treatment? Erin, I have no idea. Do you know how much Mr. Depp was paying Dr. Kipper a month? Mr. McKenna, it's also harassing when she says she doesn't know, and then you ask her how much is being paid when she says she didn't even know if he was getting paid at all. But in an abundance of caution, she can answer the question. Erin, no. Do you have an understanding of when Dr. Kipper started treating Mr. Depp? Erin, I'm assuming sometime 2014, but I don't know the exact dates. Do you have an understanding of what Dr. Kipper was treating Mr. Depp for? Erin, my best understanding was substance abuse and mood stabilization, but that's again probably best asked Dr. Kipper. Did you have any understanding as to what substances Mr. Kipper was treating Mr. Depp substance abuse? Mr. McKenna, and just for the record, I'm assuming if there's any privilege to be asserted on Mr. Depp's behalf as it relates to their medical issues, or Miss Heard for that matter, someone representing those respective people will pipe up and make an objection. And at that point, if either party thinks there is a need to instruct the witness not to answer that question, please let me know and I will do so. Wanted to repeat the question. Yeah, did you understand what substances Mr. Depp was abusing that Dr. Kipper was treating him for? Erin, I don't know, or I don't recall the exact. I could probably look through notes and get a general sense, but I don't recall. Was there a particular nurse in charge of Mr. Depp's care with Dr. Kipper? Erin, in 2014, yes, Miss Lloyd was primarily overseeing his care from a nursing perspective. Did you ever hear Miss Lloyd being referred to as Mr. Depp's sober coach? Erin, did you say sober coach? Erin, I don't recall that. Were you ever in charge of Mr. Depp's care while working for Dr. Kipper? Mr. McKenna, vague and ambiguous as to what you mean as care, but what you're asking is if she ever personally involved in his care. I think the charge would be with Dr. Kipper, but she can answer the question. Erin, sorry, could you repeat the question? Were you ever responsible for Mr. Depp's nursing care while he was under the treatment of Dr. Kipper? Erin, I provided him with nursing care. Okay, so now we're putting up attachment 1. So Ms. Felati, I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 2 to your deposition. And do you see these ones here, these exhibits? Is that the paper documents you have, set of the paper documents you have in front of you? Mr. McKenna, part of them, first page. Erin, the first page. And the first page might have said the bottom K182. Erin, yes, I have that. Okay, do you recognize these as what are these? Erin, these are my working notes kept for Ms. Heard, yes. And these are notes you created? Erin, yes. And did you create these notes in the ordinary course of business? Erin, excuse me, could you repeat that? Did you create these notes in the ordinary course of business? Erin, as I'm working. And Mr. McKenna is like, it's a legal nonsense kind of thing. And she just said yes. Okay, you were trained in how to prepare these notes? Erin, yes. Who trained you in how to prepare them? Erin, University of Maryland School of Nursing. Was there a system that these notes were typed correct? Erin, that's correct. Was there a particular system you typed these notes into? Erin, no. You typed those into a Word document? Erin, yes. And when did you write? Did you have handwritten notes that you then typed up, or was the one process? Erin, it depended. I don't recall if I kept notes to myself, but these notes that you're seeing in front of you were the ones that I prepared for Dr. Kipper, who was the treating physician. When you went to see Ms. Heard, were you bringing a laptop with you? Erin, I don't believe so. Would you write these? How long after the visit would you write up these notes? Erin, it would depend. Sometimes I would keep notes on my phone and then I would transfer to the Word document when I was in front of my laptop. And if not possible, I would do it as soon as feasible. And how often would you show these notes to Dr. Kipper? Erin, I don't recall. At intervals, but I don't recall. And do you know if Debbie Lloyd took notes like this? Erin, I don't. The answer is I don't know. I would assume, but I don't have her document, so I can't tell you for sure. Would you speak to Dr. Kipper about these notes at any time? Erin, I would speak to Dr. Kipper about the client's care, which is included in these notes. Do you know if Dr. Kipper read these notes? Erin, I don't know. So if you look at the first page in the notes from the first entry, August 27, 2014, correct? Erin, yes. Okay, and you wrote, RN has been hired to provide private nursing care for client Amber Heard, right? Erin, correct. And RN refers to you, correct? Erin, correct. And RN means registered nurse, correct? Erin, correct. Okay, and throughout those notes, and you say this here, Amber Heard would be referred to as client or AH, correct? Erin, that's correct. All right, and Johnny Depp would be referred to as JD. Erin, that's correct. Okay, when you were first hired to be Amber's nurse, did you have an understanding that Amber and Mr. Depp had been on his island previous to your hiring? Did you recall that? Did you have any understanding that Debbie Lloyd and Dr. Kipper were on Mr. Depp's island in approximately August of 2014 performing a detox of Mr. Depp? Erin, I recall them being present at Mr. Depp's island. I don't recall the exact dates. Do you recall that they were attempting to perform detox on Mr. Depp? Erin, I recall that they were to provide treatment for him. I don't know the exact specifics. Did you have any understanding as to any physical incidents between Mr. Depp and Amber Heard in this time on the island that you understand that Dr. Kipper and Miss Lloyd were there? Erin, I don't recall. Ms. Felati, I'm showing you again what's been marked as Felati Exhibit 2 and looking at this entry from November 4th, 2014. Do you see that? Erin, yes. I do see that. Okay, and you wrote this note? Erin, yes. And you wrote, CT reports increased sleep last evening. CT had daily session with therapist and states she will continue to see therapist daily until crisis resolved. Positive reinforcement given for coping skills. Do you recall what crisis was going on around November 14th, 2014? Erin, no. And then if we go to the next page, there's a note for November 23rd, 2014. Do you see that? Erin, I do. And near the bottom of those notes, it says client and fiance have reconciled. Do you see that? Erin, I do. Do you recall in November 2014 what they were reconciling from? Erin, I don't recall with this note. Okay, would you agree that Mr. Depp and Amber would get into fights? Mr. McKenna, can you explain to us what you mean by fight? Could you be more specific, please? Do you know what I mean, Miss Felati? Mr. McKenna, well, Adam, there's fist fights, there's verbal fights, then there's lovers' quarrels. I mean, I think a distinction between fist fight and verbal fight is probably worthwhile for purposes of this case. So if you could define it further as such, that would be great. Question. Would you agree that Mr. Depp and Amber would get into verbal arguments? Mr. McKenna, if you know, you can answer. Erin, I recall a general sense of discord in the relationship. And what do you mean by general sense of discord? Erin, I just recall there being disagreements, reconciliation, kind of that repeating pattern. And would you be at times taking care of Amber because of this, the disagreements between Mr. Depp and Amber? Erin, I provided emotional support. I was not present with her often, but it was available over the phone, via text, and sometimes in person. During the time that you were Amber's nurse, did you consider Amber a friend? Erin, I considered us to be very friendly. You would go to dinner socially with Amber at times. Erin, we went out to dinner, yes. Do you recall how many times you went out for dinner with Amber? Erin, no. Did you know Amber's friends? Erin, yes. I don't know them personally now, but yes, I was around them. Were you around Amber's sister? Erin, yes. And what was Amber's sister's name? Do you recall? Whitney? Erin, yes. Does that ring a bell? Erin, yes, thank you. Did there ever come a time that you understood that Mr. Depp and Amber went to Japan together? Erin, Japan sounds familiar, but I didn't go, so I don't really remember. Do you recall there ever being an incident on the flight to Tokyo which Dr. Kipper was on? Erin, I don't recall what happened on a plane that I wasn't present on. And do you have any understanding as to anything that happened on a plane or in Tokyo? Is that correct? Erin, not as I'm sitting here right now discussing it. Okay, did you attend Amber and Mr. Depp's wedding? Erin, yes. How long? Where was the wedding? Erin, the wedding I was present was on Mr. Depp's private island. How long were you on Mr. Depp's private island for? Mr. McKenna, for that wedding? Mr. Nadelhaft, for that wedding, yes, thank you. Erin, to be honest, I don't remember exactly, but I would say approximately a few days. How many times were you on Mr. Depp's private island? Erin, just the time of the wedding once. What do you recall about the wedding? Erin, in what sense? We'll strike that, that's fine. Were you taking care of Amber as a nurse at the wedding? Erin, I was providing medication and personal care. Were you providing nursing care during those days, or were you on the private island for the wedding? Erin, not that I can recall. Maybe I have a moment to look through my notes to see. Would you recall if the wedding was approximately February 2015? Mr. McKenna, are you trying to assist her, or are you asking a new question? Mr. Nadelhaft, I'm assisting, well, both, to try to get her on the notes. Mr. McKenna, to get her to the February notes to see if that jogs her memory, and feel free to say, hey, your note here on X to speed things up. Mr. Nadelhaft, well, it doesn't, that's why. Mr. McKenna, all right. Adam, I don't think it's there. Erin, so I don't believe I was providing medication or personal care during the time of the wedding. Okay. Do you recall that in March of 2015, Amber went to Australia to be with Mr. Depp? Erin, yes, I remember she went to Australia. As to the dates, I would have to look through documents as to ascertain the exact dates. Okay, and Exhibit 2, this is your note from March 7th, 2015. Erin, that's correct. And you wrote, client notes RN via text is of increasing anxiety. Erin, yes, I wrote that. Do you recall at any time what Amber was having anxiety about? Erin, in reference to this note or in general? First, in general. Erin, in general, I feel like I don't remember specifics, but I think there was a lot of anxiety in reference to many topics. Was Amber's relationship with Mr. Depp one of the causes of her anxiety? Erin, through my notes, I make reference to her having anxiety in relation to the relationship with Mr. Depp, so I would assume so, yes. And then on March 8th, 2015, you wrote, RN received report from Debbie RN. Debbie is being Debbie Lloyd, correct? Erin, that's correct. Do you recall what the report you received was on March 8th, 2015 from Debbie? Erin, 1 minute, I'm just reading my notes. So to answer your question, no, I don't recall specifics of what the report would have been. I assume based on this note that it would have been a phone call. Okay, and it says client will be returning to Los Angeles on March 9th, 2015, accompanied by house manager Ben. Do you see that? Erin, I do. Do you have any understanding as to why Amber was leaving Australia in March of 2015? Erin, yes. I don't know if this exact timing, but you know better than I. There was an incident in Australia. They had been, Miss Heard and Mr. Depp had to be separated. So Miss Heard returned to Los Angeles per my nursing notes, and I believe Mr. Depp must have stayed in Australia. What was your understanding as to why Mr. Depp and Amber had to be separated? Erin, it's hard to recall specifics because I wasn't there or involved at the time, but became involved again. I remember hearing from other people that there was quite an argument between the two in Australia. And did you hear that the argument was at Mr. Depp's house in Australia? Erin, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. Do you have any understanding as if the argument became physical at all? Erin, I don't recall. I wasn't there. Do you have any understanding if anyone was injured during the argument between Amber and Mr. Depp? Erin, physically injured? Again, I wasn't present, so I'm only speaking as to what I recall during that time period. And I just remember Mr. Depp's finger was injured. I can't tell you specifically which one, but I remember there was an injury to his finger. Do you have any understanding as to how his finger was injured? Erin, no. And then, Erin, you wrote on the next note on March 9th, 2015 that says, RN and CT in touch via text and phone calls after client arrived at 1500. Erin, yes, I wrote that. Okay, and 1500, you're using military time, correct? Erin, that's correct. So it would be 3 p.m. Erin, correct. Okay, and you wrote, client expressed feeling, quote, sad, right? Erin, yes, I wrote that. Do you recall what Amber was sad about at approximately March 9th, 2015? Erin, I can't speak to I don't remember specifically, but I would assume based on March 8th note, it would make the assumption that those feelings were in relation to the relationship issues. And you wrote further down the note, CT states that she would like to discuss recent events between her husband with RN in private tomorrow. Plans are made for RN to visit client at her home tomorrow. You wrote that, right? Erin, just one second. I think I lost my spot. Oh, I see. Sorry, could you repeat that again? You wrote, client states she would like to discuss recent events between her and her husband with RN in private tomorrow. Plans are made for RN to visit client at her home tomorrow. Erin, yes, I wrote that. Do you recall the conversation you had with Amber regarding the events between her and Mr. Depp at this point in March, around March 9th, 2015 timeframe? Erin, no, I don't recall specifics. Do you recall anything in general? Erin, I really don't. I'm sorry. Did Amber express any fear of Mr. Depp at this time? Erin, I don't recall. I don't see that in the notes, so I can't speak to that. And then there's a note from March 10th, 2015. Do you see that note? Erin, I do. You have, just curious, you have dots out there at the end. Do those are dots referring to? Erin, often if I put in dots, it was a note to myself to follow up, with Dr. Kipper or Debbie Lloyd with the medical team. So it was often sort of left for myself to remind me to get in touch with them for an update. Do you recall if you gave Dr. Kipper or Debbie Lloyd an update around this March 10th, 2015 timeframe? Erin, I don't recall, but I would assume at fairly regular intervals we would touch base with each other. We're putting up attachment number 3. Miss Felati, I'm showing you what's been marked as Felati Exhibit 3. This is a letter from Dr. Kipper to Mr. Depp on March 5th, 2015. Do you see this letter? Erin, yes, I see it. Did Dr. Kipper ever show you this letter that he wrote to Mr. Depp? Erin, can I have a minute to read through this? Because I'm not familiar with this, thank you. So she said, I skimmed through this briefly. I don't know if I've ever seen this specific letter before, but I do have a vague memory of this time period. Do you recall a time where Dr. Kipper terminated the care of Mr. Depp? Erin, if this letter was received by Mr. Depp from Dr. Kipper, I would make that assumption. The first paragraph in the middle, the first paragraph starts, I'm so sorry for your struggle, the events over the past several days, and our inability to properly monitor your safety are beyond concerning, and I don't feel I'm helping you. As we discussed earlier today, regarding your surgery Monday, it's my responsibility to the surgeon to clear you medically for this procedure, and now I'm uncomfortable doing so. Further, the nurse supervision has broken down, and this places you at great risk of medication interactions that can prove harmful. Do you have any understanding as to nurse supervision with Mr. Depp breaking down? Erin, I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question. I'm sorry, can you repeat that? Did you have any understanding of nurse supervision of Mr. Depp breaking down around the March 15th, 2015 timeframe? Erin, I don't recall specifics, but according to this letter. Mr. McKenna, it's not a good question, but he's just essentially trying to ask you, do you have any memory of any kind of care supervision breakdown between either the parties and the nursing care provided by either one of you? That's what he's trying to ask. Erin, okay. Mr. McKenna, during that time frame. Erin, I do recall. I have personally had a horrible personal family issue that I remember I was not always available to work, so that probably tied this in. As to other specifics, I'm not positive. Mr. Nadelhaft, okay. Do you recall Mr. Depp having surgery performed on his finger? Erin, I don't recall that, but I do recall his aftercare. So you don't. Do you recall any concerns about Mr. Depp before his surgery? Erin, no. Okay, we can take this down, putting up another one. Miss Felati, I'm showing you a text change between you and Whitney Heard on March 23rd, 2015. Do you see that? Erin, yes, I do. And on March 23rd, 2015, you texted to Whitney Heard, Debbie just told me what's going on and to check in with you. Is Amber awake or fall asleep? Do you see that? Erin, I do. And Miss Heard wrote, she finally fell asleep. Do you see that? Erin, yes. Okay, and then you wrote, thank goodness, she must be exhausted. Erin, I'm sorry? She said, I'm sorry. Just to confirm, this is from Whitney Heard, not Amber Heard, correct? Adam, that's, as I understand it, it's Whit Heard. Is that your understanding? Erin, I assume. Thank you. And then do you recall ever communicating with Whitney Heard via text or chat? Erin, that sounds familiar. And you wrote, thank goodness she must be exhausted. Do you want me to come to the loft or is she safe and sound asleep? Erin, I do see that. Okay, and then Whitney wrote, safe. No, she's not. Kept saying she wants to off herself. Do you see that? Erin, I see that. Do you recall these texts help you recall anything that occurred on March 23rd, 2015 regarding Amber? Mr. McKenna, is that the totality of the text? Mr. Nadelhaft, we can keep going. Mr. McKenna, so the answer is no, is not. You're asking if it refreshes her recollection. Maybe she should see the whole thing. Mr. Nadelhaft, yeah, Robert, you can that's fine. You can look through the whole thing. I'm not trying to trick you. Erin, so could you repeat the question, Adam? Okay, well, I'll keep going through it and you can look through this if you'd like. That's fine. If you need to tell me what to scroll down more, okay. Do you recall Whitney Heard telling about an incident that occurred March 23rd, 2015? Erin, I don't. And let me ask you a question here. Whitney Heard wrote, trying to fix some of the things he broke. Do you have an understanding of what the who is, he is? Erin, no, not based on this. Okay, do you recall ever a time where Amber Heard was saying she wanted to delete herself? Erin, no. Do you recall ever going to Amber's after driving over to Amber's after being called over by Whitney? What? Do you recall ever driving over to Amber's after being called over by Whitney? Erin, I went to Amber's many times. I don't recall specifically going after speaking to Whitney, but wouldn't rule that out either. Adam, did you ever go to Mr. Depp and Amber's penthouse? Erin, in Los Angeles? Yes. Yes, I did. Was there ever a time you went there and saw damage done to the penthouse? Mr. McKenna, when you say damage done, that assumes that she was present when the things were being damaged. What you're trying to ask, was there any? Mr. Nadelhaft, okay, no, enough. Mr. McKenna, no, it's not enough. I'll instruct the witness. Mr. Nadelhaft, God, I don't know why. Go ahead. Mr. McKenna, honestly, I'm sure there is a relevant question coming up, Adam. I'm hanging in there for you. Adam, why are you so angry? I don't understand why you're so angry. I'm not sure. Mr. McKenna, I get the gist of what this case is about, and it feels like you want to take all the time you can rather than ask the questions that are necessary. Adam, I'm asking her if she saw damage at I'm asking her. Mr. Nadelhaft, this is Whitney calling that Amber is hurt and that she says she doesn't remember it. That's a perfectly relevant question. Mr. McKenna, go ahead. It's your time. Mr. Nadelhaft, have you ever seen any damage done to the penthouse? Erin, not that I can recall. Mr. Nadelhaft, okay, can you put up number 7? Miss Felati, this is an extraction of text messages we received from Mr. Depp, text messages between you and him. I'll represent that to you. Would you agree that you text message with Mr. Depp on occasion? Erin, yes. Okay, all right. And you see that text message from Mr. Depp to you on June 6, 2015? Erin, June, did you say 6th? Did you see, okay, so Mr. Nadelhaft, did you see that message from Mr. Depp on June 6, 2015? Erin, yes. May I have a minute just to read it through? Because I haven't seen this before. Okay, thank you. I'm done. Do you know what Mr. Depp was referring to when he talked about helping me off the grim path I've merely existed for most of my life? Mr. McKenna lacks foundation and that you haven't established that she has any memory of the text itself. Erin, I don't know. I'm not familiar with this text, so I can't give you an answer to that. Okay, Mr. Depp refers to the most harmful and life-threatening beast that cruelly claimed me as a child. Do you have any understanding as to any issues that Mr. Depp was going through as of June 6, 2015? Erin, I don't know what he was going through specifically at that time according to this text. Do you know if Mr. Depp had been drinking or using drugs since the time Dr. Kipper started seeing him in 2014 through this June 6, 2015 time period? Erin, do I know if he was drinking, you said, from 2014? 2014 through this time frame, June 6, 2015? Erin, I don't recall. I don't know specifically. And now we go to another exhibit. Miss Felati, I'm showing you what's been marked as Felati Exhibit 6 to your deposition, and these are text messages between you and Amber Heard. Do you see that? Erin, okay, I do see that. I haven't reviewed this document, but I do see what you're saying here on the screen. Okay, by the way, when you produce text messages, did you produce all of the text messages with Amber Heard relating to Johnny Depp? Erin, I produced everything that I had. Okay, and it was everything you had on your phone at the time. Erin, yes, that's correct. Okay, do you know if you checked in the cloud for any text messages? Erin, I just recall searching high and low in response to the subpoenas for both parties. Looking at this text message, do you recall receiving this text message as in responding to Ms. Heard around September 22nd, 2015? Erin, just one sec, I'm just skimming through this. So I don't have a memory of receiving this, but it doesn't sound familiar. Okay, in the middle of the text messages, in the blue is Amber Heard and AH. Do you see that? Erin, yes. Well, above you wrote, well, let's go up, we'll go up. You wrote, do you have a lot going on today, or can you test? The melatonin tonight should help with the jet lag. Are you and Jay well? I'm not sure if he ever called Kipper back, but Kipper plans to meet him while he's back in LA. Do you see that? Erin, I do see that. And then Amber wrote, that's great. It's been strained with him. He needs help. Do you see that? Erin, I see that. And then you wrote, oh man, I'm sorry. Have things gotten worse? Are you safe? Do you see that? Erin, I see that. Were you ever concerned about Amber Heard's safety? Erin, was I concerned about her safety? Correct. Erin, or did she describe, sorry, can you rephrase that? Do you recall writing, have things gotten worse? Are you safe? Erin, like I said, I don't recall writing or receiving this text, but I see I'm reading it as presented. Were you ever concerned about Ms. Heard's safety as it relates to Mr. Depp? Erin, so if she made comments to me that she was not safe, I would be concerned about her to ensure that she was safe, yes. Do you recall Ms. Heard making comments to you about her safety? Erin, I remember a general sense, meaning Ms. Heard and Mr. Depp would have arguments. She would often have her friends around her for support, but from a general, physical sense, she was always in a safe place. And where you mean in a general physical sense, she was always in a safe place? What do you mean by that? Erin, meaning she was always, not always, I should often say often home, often surrounded with friends. She had friends that lived right down the hallway from her, so she was always supported. Do you recall Ms. Heard ever expressing to you that she felt unsafe when she was alone with Mr. Depp? Erin, nope, not that I can recall. What about more generally? Erin, my memory is very fuzzy from that time, so I don't recall specifics, but again, I'm happy to go through the documents to get the specifics if you want. Do you recall if Mr. Depp was drinking alcohol during the September time from 2015? Erin, no, I don't recall specifically if he was drinking at that time frame, during this time frame. Do you recall if he was taking THC? Erin, I don't recall. Do you see where you write also, I would encourage you not to bring up meeting with you? What? Do you see where you write also, I would encourage you not to bring up meeting with Kipper or anything else along those lines. We don't want him to feel backed into a corner and suspicious. You know that me, Kipper, and Debbie will work on a plan to approach him when you guys are back, and we'll make it seem very casual so he doesn't avoid it. Then Kipper will work his magic. Do you see that? Erin, I do see that. Okay, do you recall ever telling Amber not to bring up a meeting with Dr. Kipper? Erin, no, I do not recall that. Okay, at the bottom you wrote, forgot to ask, he's been around any usual suspect suppliers like Josh, Not Rockies, Marilyn, etc. Do you recall understanding that Mr. Depp had any sort of suppliers? Erin, I don't even recall what apparently I was talking about with this text. Do you know who Rocky is? Erin, yeah, Rocky is or was Miss Heard's friend. I think very close friend. Do you have any understanding that she's not Rocky's, not Amber's close friend anymore? Erin, I don't know. That's what, 8 years ago, 7? I'm just saying that at the time. Was Mr. Depp friends with Marilyn Manson? Oh, there it is again. Erin, yes, I believe so. You went to Thanksgiving dinner with Marilyn Manson and Mr. Depp, correct? Erin, I went to a Thanksgiving dinner. I don't remember if Mr. Manson was there, but I do remember going to Thanksgiving dinner. Okay, Miss Felati, I'm showing you what will be marked as Exhibit 7 to your deposition, and these are texts that Mr. Depp produced between you and him. And I'm focusing on this message on October 31st, 2015. Do you see that? Erin, could you repeat that? What are you referring to? Yeah, I'm referring to the second one here on October 31st, 2015 from Mr. Depp to you. Erin, okay, thank you. First, do you recall receiving this text message from Mr. Depp? Erin, nope. Do you see where he says, Mr. Depp says, I taught you pimp when he was a child, sent hug to text to Kipper, no response. He's a nod duck, old Kipper. This is the second time he's held off giving me meds by blackmailing me into seeing him. The first time I just chopped my finger off. Do you see that? Erin, yes, I see that. Does that refresh your recollection at all as to what happened to Mr. Depp's finger? Erin, again, I just remember he had an injury to his finger. I couldn't even tell you which specific finger. Okay, and it does. How do you know he did it? How don't you know? What? You don't know how he did it, do you? Erin, no. Okay, do you recall any time where Dr. Kipper was refusing to give Mr. Depp medication? Erin, no, not that I recall. So you said you recall having Thanksgiving dinner with Amber and Mr. Depp. Erin, yes, I recall having Thanksgiving dinner with Miss Heard and Mr. Depp. Do you recall if there was any other people there? Erin, yes. Do you recall who else was at the dinner specifically? Erin, specifically, I remember Miss Heard's father, I remember various friends, and just can't tell you exactly who. Did you attend this dinner in a personal capacity or as a nurse? Erin, both. Okay, did you bring your computer with you to dinner? Erin, not that I can recall. And when you wrote this note on November 26, 2015? Erin, I'm sorry, can you repeat that date? Exhibit 2, you wrote on a note November 26, 2015? Erin's like, correct. And looking at this document, you can't tell when you actually wrote the note, right? Erin, that's correct. When did you decide, how did you decide when to write down a note versus a time when not to write down a note? Erin, it's a little complex because I was in contact with Dr. Kipper, often via phone calls, text messages, emails, things like that. We were in touch frequently about updates with the clients. If anything happened medication-wise, emotionally-wise, anything that I had not discussed and or deemed relevant, I would also include that in my notes. Do you recall ever speaking with Dr. Kipper regarding Whitney, calling you and asking you for help, or texting you and asking you for help with Amber? Erin, I just want to clarify. Did you say, do I recall Dr. Kipper calling me? No, I'm sorry. Do you recall ever speaking to Dr. Kipper? We'd seen that text between you and Whitney on March 23rd, 2015. Do you recall speaking to Dr. Kipper regarding that incident? Erin, I don't recall. Okay, and looking at that text message between Whitney and you, would that have been something, if it occurred, that you would have reported to Dr. Kipper either verbally or in writing? So they just wanted the text message to go back up. So Erin said, thank you. And what was your question regarding this? Well, this is the text between you and Whitney on March 23rd, 2015. Do you see that? Erin, I do. Okay, and if we go back to Exhibit 2, and I'll go back, there's no entry for March 23rd, 2015. Do you see that? Erin, yeah. I just recall asking you, would you have, if that text message occurred between you and Whitney and you went over to Amber's house, would that have been something that you have been reported to Dr. Kipper either verbally or in writing in these notes? Erin, so to answer your question, Adam, I often was in contact with Dr. Kipper when I visited either Miss Heard or Mr. Depp. So you may have told Dr. Kipper verbally about something that occurred on March 23rd, 2015. Is that correct? Erin, I don't know because I don't remember that specific date or conversation. You could have given care to Miss Heard for something and it not be reflected in these notes. Is that in your testimony? Erin, I don't think I do. Could you repeat that? Oh, she didn't understand. Not everything you do for Miss Heard as a nurse is reflected in these notes, correct? Erin, that would be a safe assumption. And would there be certain days that you would see Miss Heard as a nurse that you would not include this in, and that you would not include it in your notes, correct? Erin, that I don't know for sure. So there's this, your notes that have said March 26, 2015. Do you see that? Erin, yes. And the next notes we have are November 25th, 2015. Do you know why there's a long period where there's no notes? Erin, yes. Perhaps I can shed some light for you and everyone in the relationship. When I was first hired to take care for Miss Heard, I worked full time, and I was assigned 24/7, basically. And after a period of time, I became more part-time and on call. And I was working with different clients at the time. So I would not be working regularly, but would also be available if an issue arose or a medication change needed or things like that. So I would assume that would account for this gap. Why did you move from full-time to part-time? Erin, I don't know the exact answer, but I assume that was my decision to make. That's usually the client and or treating physician. So you're saying that, okay, so my understanding, you're saying that as of March 2015, Amber was getting full-time care from you? Erin, no. I don't know the exact dates. At some point, Amber was getting full-time care from you. Erin, at some point in time, I was working with her regularly, daily. And then when it changed to part, you were working for her part-time? Erin, again, just to clarify, I never worked for Miss Heard directly. But yes, I was working with her part-time or a few times a month, things like that. Did you have an understanding as to why Miss Heard needed nursing care full-time when you were doing that? Erin, my understanding, and again, this is just from my memory and from reviewing my nursing notes was, or if I can even reference my nursing notes on, August 27th, 2014, I don't know if you need to show that or if I can just read it. Okay, so just the first page, Exhibit 2. Yes, thank you. Okay, Erin, so if you can go down, it's about the third paragraph a little bit. Yes, per report from JD, which refers to Mr. Depp, Debbie RN, and Dr. Kipper, client AH, which is Miss Heard, has reportedly been experiencing increased anxiety and agitation recently and has several outbursts of anger and rage. From what I remember, when I was involved in the case, it was to help assist Ms. Heard with her emotional issues, anxiety issues, and attempts to assist, in layman's terms, kind of calming things down a little bit. Do you recall any examples that you knew of anger and rage shown by Amber? Erin, I do recall seeing her very angry, and I'd have to refer to my notes. It was in London, so that would have been 2014, and I believe it was in reference to a violating incident where her phone had been hacked and she was quite upset. I saw her angry at that time, and other times, I don't recall. Were you in London with Amber at this time? Erin, yep. And how was Amber showing her anger? Erin, I recall loud, kind of elevated voice, yelling, crying, quite upset. Who was she? Was there someone with her, Amber, when she was yelling and crying? Erin, I was present. I believe Miss Heard, Mr. Depp were there, and I can't say who else, perhaps Miss Lloyd. I just don't recall that. And you recall that when Amber's phone had been hacked? Erin, correct. And you can't recall any other incidents of Amber showing anger or rage? Erin, not that I witnessed. Mr. Nadelhaft, why don't we take a break now? So they do take a break. Okay, back on the record. Mr. Nadelhaft, Catherine, can you please put up Exhibit 4 for a second? Miss Felati, do you see Exhibit 4 again? Erin, yes. You need to speak up a little bit. Erin, can you hear me? Erin, yes, I do. Okay, do you recognize where it says Erin Nurse and phone number? Do you recognize that as your phone number? Erin, I do. And just as a side note for anyone, these won't become public, correct? My phone number? Right. Well, this deposition is not going to be public. I don't know what's going to happen at trial, but that is your phone number. Erin, that is my phone number. Oh, Mr. Nadelhaft, how wrong you were. Here we are. Okay. Takedown number 5. Do you see Felati Exhibit 5? Erin, yes. The top number, do you recognize that as your Australia phone number? Erin, I don't recognize it, but it also wouldn't have known what my phone number was in Australia. Did you have separate phones in Australia, a separate phone number in Australia? Erin, correct. I was provided with the phone for the time that I was there. Oh, who provided you the phone? Erin, I don't recall specifically, but someone within the team of Miss Heard and Mr. Depp. And looking at Exhibit 6 to your deposition, this is your text. That's your cell phone number, correct? Erin, 1 second. Where do you see that? Oh, yeah. That's correct. Can you take that down and go up to 7? And if you look where we go, October 31st, 2015, the second entry, do you see that? Erin, yes, I see. All right. And where it says Erin Boerum, that's your number. Erin, yes. And we put back up Exhibit 2, and let's go to page 27 of the PDF. Miss Felati, can you see, or do you need to be blown up? Okay. Yes, she sees it. Okay, and then that entry you wrote, client contacts RN via phone and states she had an argument with husband JD previous night. CT states husband JD left home and she's unaware of his location. Client reports getting into verbal disagreement with husband at their home in downtown LA. She states husband JD was inebriated. C, client states the disagreement escalated and states husband used his forehead to hit her head. Client denies loss of consciousness, states she has a headache and bruised eye. RN encouraged client to notify Dr. Kipper and or go to emergency room if she was injured or felt like she was in danger. Client declined and client stated friend Rocky is with her, that husband JD will not be able to re-enter their home. Who wrote that? You wrote that. Erin, yes. Okay, do you receiving a call from Amber around December 16th, 2015 regarding this argument between Mr. Depp and Amber? Erin, I don't recall a specific phone call. Would you doubt if a phone call had occurred if you wrote it down in your notes? Erin, if I wrote it down, doubt that occurred. I just don't have a memory of it. Do you recall? So you don't. I just want to make sure I understand. Do you recall? You don't recall this being called by Amber at all regarding currently regarding this incident in December of 2015. Erin, I don't recall. So you have no recollection if any other people were with Amber at the time that she made this call. Erin, I don't recall that phone call. Do you see where it says December 16th, 2015 at the end and the last line? It says client declined and stated friend Rocky is with her, that her husband JD will not be able to re-enter the home. Do you see that? Erin, I do see that. Does that refresh your recollection at all that Amber was with Rocky when she contacted you about this incident? Erin, no, I'm sorry. I just don't have memory, but I would go to my notes. As of the note on December 16th, 2015, do you recall how many other clients you were serving at the time? Erin, no, I don't recall. Were you only servicing Amber or were there other people that you were servicing as well? Erin, I don't recall. Were any of your other clients claiming that they have been headbutted by anybody else? Mr. McKenna, excuse me? Assumes Mr. McKenna, she's not here to discuss her other clients, and she's already told you she has no memory of whether she has other clients or during this time frame. So the question is argumentative. When you ask her after she says, I have no idea if this is my only client, or I had others at the time, then you say, well, do you remember any of your other clients claiming to be headbutted? I mean, come on, she can answer that question again. Mr. Nadelhaft, I've not been treating her badly at all. Mr. McKenna, she keeps saying, I don't know whether I had other clients. Mr. Nadelhaft, I can ask these questions. I've not been treating her badly at all. I'm allowed to probe her for memory to see if something jars her memory. I'm allowed to do that. Mr. Nadelhaft, I'm allowed to ask questions different ways. Mr. McKenna, questions that you ask, but you go ahead and ask the question. Oh my God, they're really going at it. Mr. McKenna, why don't we read the question back and we can move forward? Mr. Nadelhaft, I've been trying to. Okay. Mr. Nadelhaft, back to Erin. So he asks, whether you recall a conversation or not, do you recall Amber ever making an accusation that Mr. Depp had headbutted her? Erin, that doesn't sound unfamiliar, but I don't remember specifics either. So you recall if at any time asked Raquel Pennington to do a concussion check on Amber? Erin, I don't recall, but I do see it in my notes in preparation for this deposition. I mentioned something about that. So that may have occurred. You just don't recall. Erin, correct. And now you see the note from December 17th, 2015. Erin, yes. And you wrote, RN in contact with client to notify her that she's been able to deliver medications to her home. RN waited at the door for several minutes after knocking. Client greeted RN at door looking disheveled. Hair appeared unbrushed. Client appeared weepy and sad. Posture is slouched. Client told RN about argument with husband. RN offered emotional support, but reminded client that RN could not stay as was on duty with another client and was only visiting in order to deliver medication. Per client, she had not been in contact with husband since altercation. Client had visible bright red blood appearing at center of lower lip. When RN made client aware she was actively bleeding on her lip, client stated it was from injuries sustained in the, and then it's blank. Do you see that? Mr. McKenna, it's not blank. Mr. Nadelhaft. And we can keep going down in the argument between her and her husband and that it continues to bleed actively. You wrote that, Erin, yes? And then you also wrote, client also states that her head is bruised and that she lost clumps of hair in altercation. You wrote that, Erin. I'm assuming so. It's in my notes. Okay, and then you wrote, RN briefly looked at client's scalp but was unable to visualize the hematomas client had described. You wrote that, Erin. Yes, I would agree. And then you wrote, RN encouraged client to be seen by physician, Dr. Kipper, or go to emergency urgent care for thorough assessment. Do you see that? Erin, I do. And then you wrote, client states she will contact Dr. Kipper tomorrow. Client is supported by friends, Rocky and IO, who will be staying in client's home with her. You wrote that, Erin. Yeah, I agree. Yes. Okay, going back. There's an arrows with sign here. Do you know what that is? Do you know who put those down like in your notes? Erin, no. No. Erin, I thought they were from you. No, okay. And do you recall looking at Amber's scalp? Erin, I recall vaguely just seeing her in regards to this note and you were just discussing. I don't recall if I checked her scalp. Do I mention that in my note? And Mr. McKenna's like, you do? And she said, okay, I do. Okay, well then I would go back to what my note says because I don't have exact memory of it. Question. Okay, and so just so I'm clear, and so I guess with not having a memory of it, you don't know if you did an exam on her scalp or if you don't know what it entailed. Erin, correct. I would have to go by what I have in my notes because I don't have exact memory of what that interaction was. I would, again, refer to my notes for that. Okay, so we should just go, you recall briefly looking at a client's scalp, but unable to visualize the hematomas client had described. Erin, that was what was the question you just asked? I just want to make sure I'm understanding. You wrote, RN briefly looked at client's scalp, but was unable to visualize the hematomas client had described. Erin, yes, I did. Is there anything else you remember other than what you wrote? Erin, no. And you actually even remember looking at her scalp, at Amber's scalp? Erin, I don't remember the specifics of any assessment, but I do trust my notes. It's just been a long time. Okay, and further down you talk about that Amber is supported by friends Rocky and IO. Do you know who IO is? Erin, one of Miss Heard's friends, but I don't recall the exact name. I assume IO was a nickname. Okay, and at the last sentence of the note, you wrote, RN left and will follow up with client tomorrow and will notify Dr. Kipper. Do you recall notifying Dr. Kipper about this interaction you had with Miss Heard? Erin, I don't recall, but I assume I would have if I wrote it down in my notes. Would you have noted anywhere in the interaction you had with Dr. Kipper in writing? Erin, it doesn't look like I notated that here in these notes. Would you have noted it in something else if you contacted Dr. Kipper? Erin, I don't know. Sometimes I did, but with this note, I really don't know. I'd have to go through all the documents to see. Okay, and then on December 18th, 2015, you wrote, client states she went to Dr. Kipper's office and was assessed by NP Monroe T as Dr. Kipper was out of the office. You wrote that. Erin, yes. And NP stands for nurse practitioner? Erin, that's correct. And you understand Monroe T stood for Monroe Tinker? Erin, yes. Do you recall having any discussions with Monroe Tinker about Amber Heard's visit to Dr. Kipper's office around December 18th, 2015? Erin, no, I don't recall. Okay. Ms. Felati, I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 8, a text message chain between you and Amber. Is that your phone number at the top of the exhibit? Erin, yes. Do you recall texting Amber Heard around December 16th, 2015, I love you? Erin, no, I don't recall. Do you recall ever receiving a text from Amber that says, thank you, I'm so freaked out? Erin, no, I don't recall. Do you recall texting at all with Amber after the incident that was described to you in your notes? Erin, which incident are you referring to? This incident of December, this incident that was described in your notes of December 15th, 2015. Erin, let me just review it again. I'm probably looking at the wrong date. I'm sorry. Could you restate your question again? Sure. We just looked at notes from December. Let's just get it up here. We just looked at notes from December 16th, 17th, and 18th. Erin, yes, got it. Okay, do you recall texting with Amber Heard regarding that incident that she described in the December 17th notes or December 16th, 17th notes? Erin, I don't recall. Do you see where it's Exhibit 8 where it says, after Amber said, "Thank you, I'm so freaked out," it has you writing, "I'm sure, I don't even know all the details, but it sounds very scary. Did Xanax help at all?" Do you recall Amber being very scared about any sort of incidents? Erin, I really don't recall. Do you recall at all, or Juicy said, "I don't really recall. I just want to make sure I'm understanding your answer"? Erin, I don't recall specifics. I mean, I'm reading what my text message says, but I don't have recollection of this. Okay, and then you see where Amber talks about that she's taking, "I took more Advil, is that okay?" Erin, oh yeah, I see that. And you said yes to Advil, applying eyes again once more before bed would be ideal if you can tolerate it. I'm so sorry you're going through this. Do you recall writing these texts? Erin, I do not recall. Do you recall ever telling Amber to apply eyes to herself? Erin, I don't recall writing this, but I do see it in front of me. Do you have any reason to believe you didn't write it? Erin, no, my memory is just so fuzzy as I described before. I mean, this was 7 years ago, so I'm doing my best, but it's not clear, so I don't want to give you an answer when I don't have one. Okay, and then Amber wrote, "I just found a bunch of Coke," which explains it, and you respond, "I assume you're not referring to soda." Do you see that? Erin, I see that. Do you recall ever Amber telling you that she found cocaine of Mr. Depp's? Erin, I don't recall that. And you don't have any reason to believe, again, that you didn't have this text exchange with Miss Heard, do you? Mr. McKenna, she's already answered it. She can answer it again. And when you get to the end of this line of questioning, her lunch showed up, but please finish your line of questioning. Do you remember these text messages? Erin, do I remember these? No, I don't remember these text messages. Well, and again, you don't have any. My question was, do you have any reason to believe you didn't write these text messages? Mr. McKenna, she's answered that one too, but she can answer that one again. Mr. Nadelhaft, that was actually my question. Erin, I just don't remember writing these, so I can say yes or no. I did or did not write these. Mr. Nadelhaft, and did you just say your lunch showed up? Sorry, I didn't hear you. Mr. McKenna, and also just finish whatever line of questioning you're on. It doesn't have to happen at this moment. Mr. Nadelhaft, okay. Sorry about that. I'm just looking for something here quickly. You wrote, "Do you want me to check in on him? I assume he was not the one getting hurt. I just wanted to check what you want." Do you recall writing that? Erin, I don't recall writing that. And you said, "P.S. Don't do the whitey stuff. It's bad for you." Do you recall writing that? Erin, I don't recall writing that. Okay, and she said, "Please don't check on him. I'm fine." That being Amber. And then you wrote, "I will not." And then you wrote, "I'm glad you're okay, but I feel better if I checked you out at some point. Can I visit you? Can I visit you tomorrow? Are you busy?" Do you recall this? Do you recall writing that? No, I don't recall writing that. Miss Felati, I'm showing you what has been marked as Exhibit 9 to your deposition. It's an email you wrote to Dr. Kipper on December 4th, 2015. Is this your email address in which the exhibit, top of Exhibit 9? Erin, yes, it is. And you wrote, "Hello, good sir. Just wanted to let you know I still have not heard from JD. I'll let you know as soon as I hear from him. I want to talk with you, though, when you have some time. I want to offer some thoughts I have on the discussion he and I had last Sunday, and reassure you that I do not believe JD sees any of us as anything other than trustworthy, and for making him our concern and priority. To be honest, I'd be surprised if he recalled much of what we discussed, and also have some concerns that he'll make the 11 a.m. meeting. I know you have a bar mitzvah on Saturday and don't want to be late, so if you do not hear from JD soon, I'll also call Amber to confirm, as she was planning on joining. Do you recall writing this email to Dr. Kipper? Erin, nope, I do not recall writing this. Okay, do you recall you write, "To be honest, I'd be surprised if he recalled much of what we discussed." Do you recall Mr. Depp ever having a memory issue or any discussions you had with him? Erin, no, I don't recall. I'm sorry, can you repeat your question just so I... Okay, so Mr. Nadelhaft, do you recall Mr. Depp ever having memory issues? Erin, no, I don't recall him having memory issues. Okay, do you have any reason to believe that he didn't write this email to Dr. Kipper, do you? What, Mr. McKenna? I'm sorry, what was the question one more time? Mr. Nadelhaft, you don't have any reason to believe you did not write this email to Dr. Kipper, do you? Well, that's a different question all on its own. First one didn't make sense. Erin, no, I don't recall writing it, but I don't have any reason to believe I didn't write it either. The second paragraph says, please do not worry or feel concerned about anything we do to our level of care or our cost for services. If JD were really worried about any of the above, he would continue services, nor would he explicitly tell me over and over how much he loves and respects you. Do you recall Dr. Kipper having concerns about the cost of his services for Mr. Depp? Erin, no. Do you recall Mr. Depp having concerns about the cost of Dr. Kipper's care? Erin, I don't recall. Do you recall if Mr. Depp ever forgot to take any of his medication? Erin, at a specific time or ever? At any time where you were working with him? Erin, I would say vaguely yes. Okay. Do you recall in around December 2015, Dr. Kipper not having seen Mr. Depp in a while? Erin, no, I don't recall. Do you know the results? Do you know if Mr. Depp took any, do you know if Dr. Kipper administered any drug tests on Mr. Depp? Erin, I don't know. And do you know one way or the other whether Mr. Depp failed any drug tests? Erin, I don't know. Did you ever administer any drug tests for Mr. Depp? Erin, I don't recall. Okay, we can take this down. We can put back up Exhibit 2 and nurse's notes. And if we go to page 29 of these nurse's notes, do you recall going to Amber Heard's birthday party? Erin, you mean this year that you're referring to 2016? Yeah, right, on April 2016. Erin, I did not attend Coachella, or are you speaking of Coachella? Did you attend any? Did you recall attending a dinner party at Amber's house? Erin, I believe so. I have memory of that. And I don't remember if that's 2016 that I'm remembering, but I believe it is. Okay, now if you look at this note on April 21st, 2016 of Exhibit 2, do you see where it says, client invited RN to dinner party at 8 o'clock at her home in downtown Los Angeles to celebrate her birthday, as client will be attending Coachella Music Festival on day of her birthday. Erin, yes, I see that. Does that refresh your recollection that you went to Amber's house for dinner in 2016, in April of 2016, to celebrate her birthday? Erin, I would assume, then based on these notes, that the memory I have is related to that, yes. Okay, and do you recall if you came with your computer or something to write these notes down? Erin, I don't recall. Okay, can you recall when you would have written these notes? Would it have been after the party? Erin, I don't recall, but I assume after. And it says, RN arrived with client's UK assistant, Savannah, at 2100 hours. Do you see that? Erin, yes. Do you recall that? Erin, no, I don't recall arriving with her. You understood Savannah to be Miss Heard's UK assistant, is that right? Erin, that was my understanding of her role. Do you hear that? Do you hear that, Homeland Security? Do you hear that? Yeah, we all heard it. Okay. And then you wrote, client was socializing with friends upon RN's arrival. RN apologized for tardiness. Client appeared irritable and upset. Client reports being angry with husband JD because, quote, because he was late, end quote. Did you write that? You wrote that, correct? Erin, yes. Do you recall Amber being upset that Mr. Depp was late for his party? Erin, no, again, I have vague memories of this get-together, but I don't recall that specific. What do you recall about the get-together? Erin, I just remember there being with people sitting outside and singing happy birthday. I don't really remember much beyond that, so it can refer to my notes. It seemed like a much more specific comment in my notes than my memory provides. Okay, I mean, you can take a look at your notes if it helps you with your recollection. Do you recall Mr. Depp being late? Do you recall Mr. Depp being at the party? Erin, yeah, I believe so. Do you recall Mr. Depp being late to the party? Erin, I don't recall, but I make reference to it in this nursing note. Further down in the note, you wrote Mr. Depp arrived to the party, correct? Erin, 1 second, let me find it. Where are you referring to? All right, if you have your cursor, Adam, you just Adam. Sure, you wrote, RN provided reassurance that JD would arrive and encourage client to distract by socializing with friends. Do you see that? Erin, yes, I do. Thank you. And then later down, you see it says, client states, quote, I can't believe JD isn't here. Do you see that? Erin, yes. She said, I'm sorry, sidebar, she set everyone up with that. If you go read Christy Sexton's UK statement, what she wrote, she set everyone up to make it look like Johnny was just a horrible, horrible husband. Horrible husband that just didn't care about his wife's birthday. Not even a little bit remotely true. She knew exactly where he was. She knew exactly what it was about. She was setting him up. Anyway, off we go. Where you have the quotes, was this an actual quote from Amber? Erin, I would assume if I put it in quotations. Okay, and so do you recall if you were taking notes while you were at the party? Erin, I don't recall. Okay, and you can't recall that whether Amber said, I can't believe JD isn't here yet at this time currently today? Erin, no, I cannot today. Okay, and then you wrote, client's husband JD arrives at 22:15. Do you see that? Erin, yes. Okay, and 22:15 is 10:15. Okay, and you wrote that the party was set to begin at 20 hours, so that's 8 o'clock, correct? Yes. And then you wrote, JD appears in good spirits and greets clients and guests. Do you recall that at all? Erin, no, I don't recall the specifics of him arriving. Okay, and then you wrote, during dinner, client and JD sitting next to each other and appearing affectionate towards one another. Do you recall that? Erin, no, I don't recall them being next to each other, but I do recall both of them being present. And you wrote RN, which is you, correct? Erin, yep, that's me. Socialized with JD for 45 minutes. Do you see that? Erin, yep. Do you recall socializing with Mr. Depp for 45 minutes during the party? Erin, nope, I don't recall. All right, when you wrote, JD appeared coherent, oriented, and sociable, thought process is logical and clear. Do you recall why you wrote that? Erin, no, I don't recall why I wrote that. Were there times where Mr. Depp in your presence did not appear coherent, oriented, or sociable? Erin, I don't recall. And when I mean ever, not just at this party, were there any times in your meeting with Mr. Depp, did he ever appear incoherent, unoriented, or unsociable? Erin, incoherent, sorry. What are the other terms you used? Just those ones that I have there. I don't recall, but again, my nursing services were much more limited than how much time I spent with Miss Heard. And then you wrote, thought process is logical and clear. Is this referring to Mr. Depp, right? Erin, that would be correct because the previous sentence I'm referring to him. Do you ever recall Mr. Depp's thought process not being logical and clear? Erin, no, I don't remember specifics of that. And do you remember anything in general about his thought process, Mr. Depp's thought process not being logical and clear? Erin, no. And then you wrote, JD and RN spent time laughing and watching PSA and he and AH made. Do you recall that? I don't recall sitting with him watching this, but I recall the PSA that I'm referring to in this notes. But you don't recall whether you watched it with Mr. Depp or not? Erin, no, I don't. I wouldn't have remembered it otherwise, other than that it's written in my notes. Okay, and this note isn't sparking any recollection that you now remember. Erin, again, I have general sense of being at this birthday party, but the details of it I would not have remembered other than what's written in my notes. And was it usual for you to take notes in a social setting like this? Erin, if there was any information that I needed to pass along to Dr. Kipper, these notes were written for Dr. Kipper and the treatment team. So if there were any reasons to kind of report on a client status, I would make reference to it in my nursing notes. And do you recall what the reason was that you needed to report to Dr. Kipper about Amber's birthday party? Erin, I don't. Do you know when you made the decision to write up the notes to show to Dr. Kipper? It sounds like they're not very, what? Okay, Mr. Nadelhaft goes on. It sounds like not every time you saw Amber, you wrote notes, correct? Erin, that's correct. So what made you write notes for Dr. Kipper in general? Erin, as I stated earlier, I would write notes sometimes because my train of thought got messed up. If I had incidents that I would not be able to communicate with Dr. Kipper in a timely fashion, I would make notes on that. Or sometimes if there was a medication change, I would make a note on that. So if I spoke to Dr. Kipper and updated him on client status, and if he requested, please put that in your notes, I would make notes of it. So there were, and it goes on and on. There's many reasons why I would make notes and sometimes I would not. Do you recall if Debbie Lloyd was at this party? Erin, I don't recall. Do I mention that? No, I was just asking if you recall. Erin, no, I don't recall. And do you recall if Dr. Kipper was at the party? Erin, I don't recall, but I don't think so. Okay, do you recall there being a discussion with you and Amber and Mr. Depp about Amber going to Coachella for her birthday? Erin, I don't remember the three of us speaking about it. Okay, do you see where it says, RN discussed client's birthday trip to Coachella with client? She states that she and her friends will leave tomorrow around noon and will return on Sunday. She states she wants JD to drive to Coachella with her for her birthday dinner there, and then he will return to Los Angeles Upon this statement, JD states, quote, yeah, she wants me to drive all the way there just to have dinner. That really makes sense. Do you recall that? It makes, and he's right. That makes no goddamn sense. Why would he drive all the way out there just to have dinner to come all the way back? Nope. No, I'm with Johnny on that one. No. Erin, no, I don't have any memory of that. And this is where you have quote there from Mr. Depp. You believe that's what Mr. Depp said? Erin, I would believe it was very much what he said since I have it in quotes. Okay, and do you recall if Mr. Depp was saying that statement sarcastically? Erin, I don't recall. Mr. McKenna, if you remember, and she's like, I don't recall. And then you wrote, CT and JD appeared to be cordial but irritated. Do you see that? Erin, yes. And you wrote that, correct? Erin, correct. Do you recall how they appeared irritated? Erin, no, I have no recollection of that. And you wrote, client AH told guests that she quote, was tired and escorted guests to the door to leave around 12:30, correct? Erin, correct. So did you leave? Did you recall leaving around 12:30 from the party? Erin, I don't recall, but based on my note, it sounds plausible. Do you recall if at the end of the party it was just Mr. Depp and Amber at her home? Erin, I don't recall. Do you recall if anyone else was with Amber and Mr. Depp after the party, right? Erin, no, I don't recall. I wasn't there, obviously, after the party, and I don't recall who might have been, staying around. Did you recall getting a communication from Amber after her birthday party about the status of their relationship with Mr. Depp? Erin, nope, I don't recall. Okay, Miss Felati, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 10 in your deposition, a text message change between you and Amber on April 22nd, 2016. This is your phone number at the top of the exhibit, correct? Erin, correct. Okay, and you see Amber says, love you, thank you so much for coming. Erin, yes, I see that. Yeah, and then she wrote, good morning, love. I might need one of those drips already. I had a long fucked up night. I think Jay and I are over. Do you recall receiving that text message from Amber? Erin, I don't recall receiving that. Do you recall Amber ever telling you that she thought that her and Mr. Depp were over? Erin, yes, I remember hearing that. I don't remember it being in relation to this time period, but it might go back to my texts. You don't have any reason to believe you didn't send and receive these text messages in Exhibit 10, do you? Erin, no, I don't recall them, but I don't have any reason not to believe. When do you recall hearing that Miss Heard said that she and Mr. Depp were over? Erin, I don't. It feels like they argued frequently throughout their relationship, so that would have sort of been a recurring theme throughout these years. Could you estimate how frequently Mr. Depp and Amber were arguing during the time you were seeing Amber? Erin, no, I don't know how often. Do you recall if there was a period of time after Amber's birthday where she and Mr. Depp did not see each other? Erin, from what I remember after her party, I think she and friends went to Coachella. Is that what you're referring to? And then after, do you recall there being a time period which would include Coachella where Mr. Depp and Miss Heard were not seeing each other face to face? Erin, I don't recall specifically. Okay, Miss Felati, I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 11 to your deposition, which is Felati 96 through 106. Do you see that? Erin, yes. Okay, you testified before you produced certain text messages in response to subpoenas in this case, correct? Erin, that's correct. And do these represent at least some of the text messages you produced in this case? Erin, this is from me? I assume I produced this then. Okay, and this is, if you take a look, there's a gray and blue, and we can rotate it around. You understand that this gray is Amber and the blue is you. Erin, would you mind just scrolling a bit up? But I believe I just want to verify. Yes, okay. Mr. Nadelhaft, well, let me ask you a question. Did there come a time that you learned that Amber, through Amber, that Mr. Depp's mother had died? Erin, I remember learning that Mr. Depp's mother had died. I don't remember who I heard it through specifically. Okay, and then on the second page in blue, it says, oh no, that's really sad news. I'm very sorry to hear that. Would you be okay with me offering condolences to him? That would be from you, correct? Erin, I would agree with that. And then you wrote, as for talking later, I think all you can do is just be there for him as a friend. No need to talk about other stuff right now because he'll not be able to process it, which will just be frustrating, so no point in doing it. Just give him a hug and tell him that you're there for him. The little bit of support will go a long way. And then when it really is time to discuss the relationship ending, call me if you need anything. I'm going to go to a baseball game, but have my phone with me. I love you, bitch. Who wrote that? You wrote that? Erin, yes. Do you recall writing that to Miss Heard? Erin, vaguely, I recall. I would say vague memory of this. And then you say, a little bit of support would go a long way when it really is time to discuss the relationship ending. So as of May 21st, 2016, you had an understanding that Miss Heard wanted the relationship with Mr. Depp to end. Erin, I don't recall specifically, but the text here also alludes that I had knowledge of that. And you wrote, one more thought, when he wants to discuss the relationship status, maybe just dance around the subject and let him know that you are happy to talk through things, but when the time is right. Now is the time for grieving instead. Something along those lines. Do you recall writing that? Erin, nope. Any reason to believe you didn't write that? Erin, nope. Okay. And then you wrote, hey, I'm going to be around your area tomorrow to look at some houses. Let me know when you're up for some company. Have a good night. XO. Were you looking to move around the time of May 2016? Erin, I don't know. Sounds like it. According to that text, we moved several times, so perhaps. Okay, and then Amber wrote, it's okay. God, he was completely delusional and crazed. He hit me in the face several times while on the phone to IO. She called the cops. Restraining order will be filed in the AM. Cops just left. Long after he did, of course. Rocky and Josh were there too. It was horrible. You received that text message from Amber, correct? Erin, correct. And you received that text message from Amber May 21st at 11:52 p.m. Erin, that's the timestamp there. So, yep. Do you recall, and you recall receiving this text message, right? Erin, I have a vague memory of this. And you recall Ms. Heard saying that he, meaning Johnny Depp, correct? That's who you understood he to mean? Erin, correct. He, Johnny Depp, was completely delusional and crazed. You recall receiving that text message from Ms. Heard, right? Erin, like I said previously, I have very vague memory of receiving this. And Amber told you that she was hit in the face several times by Mr. Depp, correct? Erin, yep, this text message says that. Do you recall if you spoke to Amber after you received this text message or the time after you received this text message around May 21st, May 22nd, 2016? Erin, are you saying a phone call or just? Yeah, phone call. Erin, I don't really recall. It could have happened. You just don't recall one way or the other. Erin, I would agree with that. Okay, and you received this picture from Amber? Erin, that's correct. And what did this picture show? Erin, Miss Heard. And does the picture show redness under Miss Heard's eye? Mr. McKenna, she can ask, however, as a layperson, if she has an opinion. If you have an opinion one way or the other, you just let them know. Erin, I'm no expert, so I mean, there's color on her face is different areas. I don't know what's what. Do you know why Amber was sending you these pictures? Erin, I think like you stated earlier, it's in reference to the previous text that you wrote. So, that you read. That Amber was hit in the face by Mr. Depp? Erin, can you scroll up where we were just so I can point out exactly what, thank you so much, in reference to this text on the screen now. Mr. Nadelhaft, right. The text says, it's okay, he was completely delusional and crazed, hit me in the face several times while on the phone with IO, correct? Erin, correct. And you received this first picture of Amber on 12:36 a.m., correct? Erin, that's the timestamp. And you received another picture at 12:36 a.m. Erin, it appears so. And who do you see in that picture? Erin, also misheard. Can we take this down and you received a third picture of Amber at 12:36 a.m.? Erin, yes, it appears so. And is that third picture of Amber? Erin, yes, that's misheard. And you received a fourth picture of Amber at 12:36 a.m. Amber, are you able to scroll down? Have we seen four? Oh, then she says, then yes. And the fourth picture, just so it's clear, is the fourth picture is Amber, correct? Erin, that's correct. And you received that at 12:36 a.m. Erin, that's the timestamp, yeah. Okay, and these are pictures of Amber's face, correct? Erin, yes, that's a picture of her face and neck. Do you recall receiving these pictures? Erin, like I said, I have a vague memory of this, but I don't specifically remember receiving it. Okay, do you know if you reported these pictures or what Ms. Heard reported to you to Dr. Kipper? Erin, I would assume that any information was presented to me, I would have contacted Dr. Kipper. And do you know how you would have contacted Dr. Kipper? Erin, no. Depending on the date/time, I would sometimes call, email, text. Do you know what you did in this instant? Erin, no, sorry, I don't recall how I communicated with him in this instance. Do you know if you, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. She said, no. I was just saying in this instant, I don't recall my method of communication with him. Do you know if you showed Dr. Kipper the pictures? Erin, I don't remember. Is there a reason you would not have shown Dr. Kipper the pictures? Erin, I don't know. Is there a reason to believe that you did not show Dr. Kipper the pictures? Erin, I don't recall. Do you want us to look at Exhibit 2? Erin, that's the nursing notes? Yeah, why don't we do that? Erin, sure. Okay, put it back up, Exhibit 2, and let's go. You can go like, so there's notes for May 11th, 2016. Do you see that? Erin, yes. And then the next note for May 26, 2016. Erin, yes. Okay, do you know why you didn't include notes for May 21st, 2016? Erin, I don't know. And on May 26th, you wrote, client texted RN requesting Ambien as she states she's suffering from insomnia due to stress and anxiety. Client reports, quote, having the hardest week of my life, end quote. You wrote that. Erin, yes. And you wrote, client states she cannot deal with the negative publicity she has received surrounding the divorce she requested from her husband, JD. Dr. Kipper notified. Ambien, 10 milligrams. Per Dr. Kipper, client is encouraged to make appointment with Dr. Kipper in office to be assessed. Client did not respond. You wrote that. Erin, yes. Do you recall, was May 26, 2016 the last time you were Miss Heard's nurse? Erin, I don't recall. Do you recall being her nurse after Amber Heard filed for divorce? Erin, I don't recall. Okay, we can put back up Exhibit 11. Thank you. You can just keep it up there. Thanks. Can you rotate, please? Do you recall on May 24th, 2016, Amber telling you it's official, I filed for divorce? Erin, I don't recall. I remember hearing about the divorce, but I don't recall these. And you don't? Okay. And I just want to make sure my question was clear. Do you recall Amber at any time texting you that she was filing for divorce from Mr. Depp? Erin, no. I just remember hearing they were getting divorced, but I don't recall receiving the text regarding that. Okay. And this text came from your phone, correct? You produced the document? Erin, to be honest, I don't remember producing this document. But if I sent it, then I must have. It's been a long couple of years. Okay, and then you wrote, oh my God, are you okay? I'm at dinner now, but we'll call you as soon as I wrap up. Is Rocky with you? Or any other friends? Just don't want you to be alone. Love you. Do you recall writing that? Erin, nope. Do you recall writing to make sure that Amber was with friends that she'd be okay? Erin, nope. Amber wrote, Rocky and Sis. Do you see that? Erin, yep. And Amanda's coming to meet us later. It's hard in the morning, waking up to the reality of it all. Do you know who Amanda is? Erin, I don't know who Amanda is. And you wrote on Felati 105, going to 106, okay, good. Oh, honey, I'm really sorry, but I know you're taking care of yourself, which is what you've got to do. This must be so hard for you. I can't imagine. I'll call you when I'm done. Love you lots and sending a big hug. Do you recall writing something along those lines to Amber after she told you that she was filing for divorce? Erin, I don't recall. Okay. They taken a break. They took a break. Okay, back on the record. Miss Felati, the text messages and photos you just saw in Exhibit 10 from Miss Heard, did you have ever any reason to believe that she, Miss Heard, was lying to you when she sent them to you? Erin, could you rephrase? Mr. Nadelhaft, that's what happens when all that. We just saw a text message from Miss Heard saying that she was hit in the face several times by Mr. Depp on May 21st, 2016, and 4 pictures of Miss Heard. Did you have any reason to believe that at that time Miss Heard was not telling you the truth when she sent you those text messages? Erin, at the time, no. Whenever any client presents me with information, I have to take it at face value at the time until I learn otherwise. Miss Felati, I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 12 to your deposition, which is Felati 114 through 119. You can take a look through them. It appears to be notes of when you were Mr. Depp's nurse as opposed to Miss Heard, but feel free to take a look. Erin, that's correct. I think these are my nursing notes in relation to Mr. Depp. And the first nursing note is from April 23rd, 2015. Do you see that? Erin, that's correct. All right. And you wrote, per Dr. Kipper's request, RN researched and contacted potential marriage therapists in Australia for clients Amber H. and Johnny D. Both clients have agreed to enter marriage therapy to work on communication difficulties and to strengthen their relationship. You wrote that. Erin, yes. And when you were Amber's nurse, not Amber's nurse, when you were Mr. Depp's nurse in Australia in April-May timeframe, Erin, no. From what I remember, I was not in Australia for that note. I was assisting as part of the treatment team. I did go to Australia. I think, it shows on my nursing notes. It looks like May 31st, 2015 is when I traveled to Australia. Okay, and then you wrote RN for May 31st, 2015. RN traveled to Brisbane, Australia to meet client. Client and wife traveling separately and set to arrive on June 1st, 2015, right? Erin, correct. So client now is Mr. Depp, correct? Erin, that's correct because these nursing notes are in reference to Mr. Depp. Yes, that's correct. Okay, and in the nursing note for April 23rd, 2015, you wrote that Dr. Kipper will introduce Rosalind Phillip to Debbie RN and clients Amber H. and Johnny Depp. Debbie RN will assist in coordinating sessions appointments between clients and Ms. Phillips. Do you know if Mr. Depp and Amber ever saw Rosalind Phillip? Erin, I don't know. And at Felati 117, it shows notes for June 7th, 2016, correct? Erin, that's correct. And Johnny Depp was a client and you were the registered nurse, correct? Erin, in reference to this note, yes. And again, these were notes you wrote, correct? Erin, that's correct. You wrote the following medications were approved per Dr. Kipper to be given to the client. And then there was a list of medications you wrote these notes, correct? Erin, yes, that's correct. And did you understand that Mr. Depp was taking those medications as of June 7th, 2016? Erin, per this nursing note, it appears that he was taking these medications listed. And then there is a nursing note for June 26, 2016. Do you see that? Erin, yes. And it says you wrote, client is going through divorce with wife Amber H. and is dealing with the loss of his mother, passed away 1 month ago. Client was provided with divorce request from AH 3 days after mother passed away. Do you see that? Erin, yes. And you wrote that? Erin, yes. So was it your understanding that Amber asked for the divorce? Erin, this note says that Mr. Depp was provided with divorce request from Ms. Hertz. So it appears she was the one requesting the divorce. Right. And you wrote next, client states he was not aware AH wanted divorce and expressed confusion regarding AH's desire to terminate marriage. You wrote that. Erin, yes. Is that what Mr. Depp told you? Erin, I would assume if I wrote it in my notes. Then you wrote, client divorce has been highly publicized and wife AH has been accused him of several character damaging allegations, including DV. You wrote that, correct? Erin, correct. Did you write that based on information Mr. Depp provided you? Erin, I don't know. I would assume that I've had discussions with him regarding this, considering this was a nursing note from Mr. Depp. And so as of June 2016, you wrote that Mr. Depp's character had been damaged. Did Mr. Depp tell you that his character had been damaged as of June 2016? Erin, I don't recall. I have to go by what my notes say. So it all alludes to that something that had been discussed. And you say you here wrote, client states he felt helpless previously, but is now angry at AH and wants to clear his name. Mr. Depp told you that? Erin, again, I don't recall for sure, but I would go back to my nursing notes because those were written more at the time. So I would assume that he and I discussed that. Okay, farther down you wrote, RN assisted client in processing feelings and encouraged client to continue utilizing individual therapy as he responded well to RN's use of therapeutic communication. Do you see that? Erin, yes. And you wrote that, correct? Erin, excuse me? Yes. You wrote, client is resistant, stating, quote, and I don't want anyone like Amber's wife therapist has only made things worse, end quote. Do you see that? Erin, yes. And you wrote that. Erin, yes. And where's quotes, I don't want anyone like Amber's therapist has only made things worse. That was something that Mr. Depp told you? Erin, again, as I have it in quotations, I assume he made that statement. Do you have any understanding as to how Amber's therapist made things worse? Erin, I don't know. I don't recall why he felt the therapist made things worse. Did you have any knowledge of Amber's therapist making things worse between Amber and Mr. Depp? Erin, I don't want to give an answer because I'm not even positive which therapist I'm referring to in the notes. Do you recall any therapist that Amber or Johnny Depp went to that made their relationship worse? Erin, I'm sorry, Adam. Do you mind repeating the question? Sure. Working as Amber's nurse and as Mr. Depp's nurse, were there any therapists that either Amber or Mr. Depp went to that you believe made their relationship worse? Erin, I didn't come to that conclusion. I'm not skilled enough to say if a therapist made a relationship better or worse. Okay, and when you wrote, RN gave emotional support and educated client on benefit of cognitive behavioral therapy and psychotherapy. So what does that mean? Erin, it sounds like I provided support for him and I discussed with him cognitive behavioral therapy and psychotherapy. And that those therapies could benefit Mr. Depp. Erin, again, I refer to my notes. It states educated client on benefits of cognitive behavioral therapy and psychotherapy. So I don't know specifically that I was telling him about it, but I would make that assumption based on my note. Okay, and a little farther down, you wrote, throughout RN's visit, client maintains attention and is actively participating in conversation. Client consumed 3 vodka drinks during RN's visit, 1 hour, or 7-hour visit. So 3 vodkas in 7 hours, that's actually pretty good. Honestly, considering what he was going through, that was pretty good. Client did not eat during visit and drank water only with several prompts from RN. RN educated client on possible interactions between prescribed medication and alcohol. Client verbalized understanding, but stated, quote, right now I need a little alcohol for all the bad things I'm going through, end quote. You wrote those lines? Erin, yes. And I mean, the document, you'd say the document speaks best as to how many drinks Mr. Depp had. Erin, correct. And I mean, you would say that the document speaks best as to how many drinks Mr. Depp had. Erin, correct. And that Mr. Depp drank 3 vodka drinks during your visit. Erin, that's what's in my notes. Then you said RN provided one-to-one emotional support and encouraged client to limit and or obtain from alcohol and illicit drugs. You wrote that. Erin, yep. Do you recall why you told Mr. Depp to abstain from illicit drugs? Erin, no, but I did. And not just with Mr. Depp, but in my line of nursing, provide education always with the medication clients are on and contradictions. Do you know if Mr. Depp ever took any illicit drugs during the 2014 to 2016 timeframes? Erin, I don't know. I didn't witness him using any illicit drugs, so I can't speak to that. Ms. Felati, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 1-3 in your deposition. These are some more text messages between you and Mr. Depp. Is that your phone number? Erin, oh, yes, I see that. Okay, and at September 7th, 2016, we'll go up to the top. On August 30th, 2016, you wrote, I'm watching Black Mass for the 3rd time right now. You're so goddamn talented. Do you recall writing that text to Mr. Depp? Erin, I don't recall writing that. When you wrote, I miss you, when are you coming home? And then he wrote, you're the sweetest. By the way, just for our own edification, I was high as a motherfucker when I made that film. Yes, I'm doing really, really well. And sweet Erin, laying low, letting the serpent devour its own tail, hanging on the outskirts of nowhere for a few weeks. Home soon. Love you, Angel. Do you recall receiving that text message from Mr. Depp? Erin, no, I don't recall that. And then you wrote, that's too funny. I guess it makes sense that you were high because it's when you met Debbie and Kipper. Either way, your performance is stellar and I'm just blowing sunshine up your ass. So did you recall that for reasons Dr. Kipper and Debbie were meeting? First, Mr. Depp was to work with him on illicit drugs to get off illicit drugs? Erin, I would assume so based on that note or text. I assume this is, but I don't know all the reasons that would be a Dr. Kipper question why the relationship was entered into. Okay, thank you. But now I'm going to ask you questions. I have more questions, but I know Mr. Depp's team also have their time. So I'm yielding the floor to them at this time. Okay. And then we're back on. So now it's Jessica asking the questions. Jessica is asking the questions. Okay, good afternoon, Ms. Felati. Thank you on behalf of Mr. Depp for taking the time today. In preparing for your deposition, did you speak to anyone other than your attorneys? Erin, did I? Sorry, can you say it again? Did I speak to anyone? Jessica, other than your attorneys? Erin, yes. And I believe you testified earlier that you spoke to my colleague, Camille. Is that correct? Erin, that's correct. Okay, and so other than your attorneys and Camille, who did you speak to in preparing for today's deposition? Erin, as I said earlier, I also spoke briefly to Dr. Kipper. And I'm pretty sure at some point Debbie Lloyd as well. Jessica, do you recall when you last spoke with Debbie Lloyd? Erin, no. Did you speak to any of Mr. Heard's attorneys? Erin, I don't think so. I think Mr. McKenna alluded I was previously represented by Gordon Reese, but I haven't spoken to them since. Okay, Mr. McKenna, believe it or not, there's still a tiny attorney-client privilege, even though they're representing another party in this case. So as it relates to the counsel of record for Ms. Heard, one of them, I'm going to assert the attorney-client privilege as to those discussions. Jessica said she understood. Mr. McKenna, when they happened, what the contexts were, she won't talk about. Miss Meyers, has Ms. Heard ever reached out to you in connection with the proceedings or any other lawsuit involving Mr. Depp? Erin, I don't recall. I would guess no, but I don't recall. Do you recall the last time? Oh, sorry. Erin, 1 sec. I'm sorry. I have something in my eye. Oh, no. Can you repeat that? Jessica, sure. Do you recall the last time you spoke to Ms. Heard? Erin, no. Okay, now that I think you testified earlier that you would care for a certain Dr. Kipper's patients, is that correct? Erin, can you repeat that? Jessica, I believe you testified earlier that you had cared for certain patients that were under the care of Dr. Kipper, correct? Erin, yes, that's correct. And you said some of that care was provided through the nursing agency that Debbie Lloyd owns, correct? Erin, correct. And that some of that care was directly from Dr. Kipper? Erin, correct. Okay, so how many of Dr. Kipper's have you cared for in either capacity? Erin, I don't really know. I would be completely guessing unless I went through my years of notes. I would guess anywhere from maybe 5 to 20. It's not always long cases like this, so sometimes it's very short amount of care. But, Jessica, when you were treating Dr. Kipper's patients, would you maintain nursing notes, correct? Erin, yes, correct. Okay, and I believe you said earlier that you would maintain these notes based off of your education and experience as a registered nurse, right? Erin, that's correct. Okay, so what type of information does your experience and training tell you that you should be putting in these notes? I guess it's the question. Erin, I mean, it depends on the client that I'm treating, but I would say in general, things such as medication changes or administration, vital signs, any change in status, emotional difficulties, treatment options, there's the list kind of goes on. Would you share, other than Dr. Kipper, would you share these notes with anyone else? Erin, no. And would anyone else have access to these notes? Erin, excuse me? May I answer the previous question? Jessica, sure. Erin, if there were other treating physicians, nurses, anyone, that's the one treatment team that the specific client, then yes, notes can be shared within the treatment team. Okay, and those individuals will also have access to these notes. Erin, no, not typically would they have access to them. Perhaps they might read them or be privy to the information within it, but they would not necessarily keep a copy of my nursing notes that I write for the physician. Okay, did you maintain any other records for the patients that you cared for that were under Dr. Kipper's care? Erin, other than nursing notes? Jessica, yes. Erin, I mean, sometimes I would have separate notes too. Are you talking about Mr. Depp or Ms. Heard, or are you just saying Mr. McKenna's like any patient? Erin, anytime that I'm nursing, okay, so I do maintain other documents depending on the client for medication changes, vital signs changes, things like that, but most information is held within the depths of the nursing notes. Jessica, in your time as a registered nurse, have you ever had a patient that you believed was the victim of DV? Erin, I'm not really trained in that respect, but no. Do you have any professional responsibility to report or document suspected physical abuse of one of your patients? Erin, if I witness or find out information of DV or child abuse, yes. And so what is that responsibility? Erin, to notify superiors of the information I was provided with. Is there any documentation requirement associated with that responsibility other than simply notifying your superior? Erin, and I don't know, as I sit here today, I've been out of practice for a couple of years, so I'm not sure current requirements. Now, I think you may have already answered this, but I just want to clarify. Have you ever actually witnessed any physical violence perpetrated against one of your clients or your patients? Erin, no, I have not witnessed that. When did you first meet Ms. Heard? Erin, I believe it was the end of, hang on 1 sec. Oh, I have it here. I'm just looking at my nursing notes. It looks like August 27th, 2014. Okay, so we can please pull up nursing note, which I believe is Exhibit 2. Okay, so this is the first page of your nursing notes, and it's dated August 27, 2014. So to the best of your recollection, is this the first time you would have had Ms. Heard? Erin, to the best of my recollection, and I do want to just clarify that we're looking at the nursing notes for Ms. Heard. Okay. Jessica, do you recall where you first met Ms. Heard? Erin, yes, I believe it was. I don't know the exact home, but it was one of Mr. Depp's homes. And you're familiar with the property that is referred to as Sweetser? Erin, yes. Was that at the home? Erin, I believe it was a Studio One Sweetser, I think. Okay, and do you recall who else was present when you first met with Ms. Heard? Erin, I believe Debbie Lloyd was there and Mr. Depp. Would Dr. Kipper would have been there? Erin, I don't believe he was there at the time. When do you recall your first meeting with Miss Heard? Erin, I don't recall too much other than it seemed to be a fairly pleasant experience. I was just sort of being brought in and meeting everyone, so it was just not too eventful. Okay, while we have this document up, I'd like to go through this section that's called Client History. Do you see where I'm referring to? Erin, yes. Okay, and can you please if you need to take a moment and read through the first paragraph here, which was where my questions will be coming from. Okay. Jessica, was this information in this paragraph self-reported to you by Miss Heard? Erin, can I just have a quick moment to review? Erin, okay, so to answer that question, I believe this was information given to me from Miss Heard. I'm not positive, but I can say that anytime I refer or begin sentence with client states or client reports, those I can confirm, I received that information from the client. As in totality, I would assume most information came from Miss Heard, but I can't rule out it didn't get any information from treating physician in preparation either. Okay, and I thank you. Would this information have been relayed to you at the first meeting with Miss Heard? Erin, this information, if it was information I received from Dr. Kipper, I would have had it information probably prior to meeting her. But any time that it says state, I can confirm that I got that information. I would assume that it was sometime within the first day or two of meeting her because I usually take a client history when I meet a client. Okay, if you can direct your attention to the sixth sentence, I believe it says client states she moved from Austin, Texas to New York City when she was 17 to pursue a career modeling. I think based on what you've already testified, this is something that you can confirm Miss Heard would have reported directly to you. Erin, I don't recall, but again, because it says client states, I would assume that the information would have been received from the client, Miss Heard. Do you recall anything that Miss Heard told you about moving to New York City at the age of 17? Erin, I really have no recollection of other than what's written in here in my notes. Now, if we go down a couple more sentences, it says AH reports history of substance abuse, including an addiction to whitey stuff and liquor. CT, client reports abstaining from whitey stuff for a couple years, but it was unable to report exact dates. Do you see that? Do you see that where I'm referring to? Erin, yes, I see that. And that's something that you would have written? Erin, yes. Okay, this is also information that you believe Miss Heard would have reported directly to you. Erin, again, I don't have specific recollection of this, but I would have to refer to my notes that it says client reports it. So the assumption would be she provided me with that information. And do you recall what Miss Heard told you about her addictions? Or no, I don't. I recall vaguely discussing this, but I don't recall specifics of that. Do you recall anything generally? Erin, again, I would have to go by my nursing notes on this. I feel like my notes are fairly detailed about the background, but again, I don't have exact recollection of that. Okay, so it goes on to say, CT does not smoke cigarettes. She reports consuming 1 to 3 glasses of red wine each day. Do you see that? Erin, yep. And again, this is based off your notes, something that Ms. Heard reported to you, correct? Erin, again, I don't recall the specifics of that. I would refer again in that particular sentence you're referring to. I use the verbiage of she reports, meaning Ms. Heard reports. So I would make the assumption that she reported that information to me. In the time that Ms. Heard was your patient, do you recall seeing her consume wine? Erin, yep. How regularly did you see her consume wine? Erin, I don't have an exact answer for that. Is this self-report of 1 to 3 glasses of red wine each day consistent with your recollection? Erin, I don't recall her drinking red wine every time I saw her, so I can't confirm that each time I saw her she would drink 1 to 3 glasses. I don't recall her drinking every time I saw her. Did you ever see Miss Heard appear intoxicated from drinking alcohol? Erin, I don't recall her being intoxicated. Okay, so moving on to the next sentence here, it says, she reports a familiar history of substance abuse. Both mother and father have abused and become dependent on stimulants, methamphetamine, opiates, and alcohol. Did I read that correctly? Erin, yep. And then she here refers to Miss Heard. Erin, that's correct. Okay, so this is also something that Miss Heard reported to you as far as your notes reflect. Erin, again, I don't have specific recollection of this. It appears that she did report that, but I don't remember. Do you recall anything that Miss Heard told you about her parents' substance abuse issues? Erin, I have a vague memory of discussing that. I don't recall specifics, and to be honest, wouldn't have even remembered specific substances other than what I've written here on my notes. Okay, so a couple of sentences later here, it says, client admits to history of anxiety, eating disorder, attention deficit disorder, bipolar disorder, codependency issues, and occasional insomnia. Do you see that sentence? Erin, yep. And I read that correctly. Erin, correct. And based off this note, and specifically the language that says, client admits you believe this is something that Miss Heard would have reported to you. Erin, as you stated, because it says client admits, I would make that assumption. When do you recall Miss Heard saying about her history of anxiety issues? Erin, I don't recall specifics as I stated earlier in the morning. I remember general anxiety with many issues in her life. When you started treating Miss Heard, was she taking any prescription drugs to treat her anxiety? Erin, I don't recall. If you want, I can go through my notes to see if I have anything written. I don't remember exact medication treatment regimes. We will certainly get to those notes, so we can go through them then. Do you recall Miss Heard saying about her history with an eating disorder? Erin, I don't remember. What do you recall Miss Heard telling you about her history of bipolar disorder? Erin, again, I don't recall. Do you recall whether Miss Heard was taking any prescription drugs to treat bipolar disorder? Erin, I don't recall the exact medication treatment at that time. What do you recall Miss Heard telling you about her codependence issues? Erin, I have a vague memory of discussing codependence issues within previous relationships. I couldn't give you specifics on it. It's just sort of have a vague memory of discussing that. Do you recall what your impression of the codependent issues were based off that vague memory? Erin, I'm sorry, could you repeat it? I just missed the first part of the question. Sorry, I'm going to strike that. That was not a good question. Do you recall what those discussions about her prior relationships? Erin, again, I don't recall specifics. I just remember a vague discussion of codependence issues in previous relationships. And how would you define codependence issues? Erin, codependence might be best for an expert witness. Well, what's your understanding? You use the language in this note. So what were you referring to when you used the term codependence issues? Erin, to answer the question, I would assume, based on that full sentence beginning with client admits to a history of et cetera, and including codependence issues. So, sorry, just to make sure I understand you believe that codependence issues is the term Miss Heard used? Erin, I believe so in reference to the note that we're looking at. And what did you understand Miss Heard to be referring to when she used the term codependence issues? Erin, again, I assume this was her term and I have vague memories of it, so I can't speak to specific incidences. I just don't remember the specifics of that. What did Miss Heard tell you about her history of insomnia? Erin, I don't recall specifics. I mentioned here that she admits to occasional insomnia, and I do know that there was a treatment team treated that periodically, but I don't recall the specifics of what she is referring to, past use of occasional insomnia. Do you have recollection of her telling you when her insomnia issues began? Erin, no. And during the time that you treated Miss Heard, do you recall how often she would experience insomnia? Erin, no, I don't recall how often. As I stated before, I do have a vague recollection that was a treatment team treated that sporadically, so I do recall that was an issue, but I can't answer how often that occurred. Did Miss Heard ever tell you that she had nightmares? Erin, I don't recall. Okay, so I'd like to direct your attention to the next paragraph. This starts off per report from JD, Debbie RN, and Dr. Kipper. So please take a moment and read the paragraph, but let me know if this paragraph contains information that was reported by people other than Ms. Heard. Erin, Jessica, your question was, is there any information from anyone other than Ms. Heard? Do I have that correct? Jessica, my question is, so in the new paragraph, it starts out, per report from JD, Debbie, RN, and Dr. Kipper. And so I'm asking, is the information in the report in this section reported from people other than Ms. Heard? Erin, I don't recall specifically. However, I would point to the notes that start off to say, per report from JD, Debbie, and Dr. Kipper, then I would make the assumption that the following information was reported from those individuals. Jessica, fair to say that you were pretty specific in the source of the information that were included in the notes? Erin, yes, I mentioned specific individuals. Okay, so let's look at this first sentence here. Per report from JD, Debbie RN, Dr. Kipper, client AH has reportedly been experiencing increased anxiety and agitation recently, and she has several outbursts of anger and rage. Now, I think we talked about this earlier, but this is a sentence that you wrote, correct? Erin, correct. And do you recall whether you were told about Miss Heard's outburst of anger and rage? Erin, no, I don't recall. Do you recall witnessing Miss Heard having outbursts of rage and anger? Erin, so I understand the question correctly. Are you referring to in reference to this nursing note? No, I'm saying that's a fair question point. In the time that you treated Miss Heard, do you recall observing her have an outburst of anger or rage? Erin, I think I spoke to that earlier in response to one of Adam's questions. The only time I sort of some recollection of any kind of anger and outburst was in London of 2014. I don't have the exact dates, but in reference to this incident. Do you have any non-specific recollections of Miss Heard being angry or enraged? Erin, other than that time that I spoke about in London 2014, I didn't specifically witness anger and rage from Miss Heard. At the time you treated her, did anyone ever tell you that they had witnessed Miss Heard, have an outburst of anger and rage? Erin, I don't recall specifically. I will say I assume at some point, just based on this nursing note that we're looking at, that I have reported from individuals discussing that. I don't remember specifically though. Okay, next sentence here. It says, her mood has been labile. And am I pronouncing that correctly? Erin, emotional lability. It is typical when emotions swing on a pendulum. For example, you may see someone very sad at one moment and quickly transition to extreme happiness. It sort of swings from, like I said, like a pendulum. And did you ever, in the time that you treated Miss Heard, did you ever personally witness this type of emotional lability? Erin, I don't recall specifically. Okay, now the next sentence here says, both client and fiance JD reported increase in verbal disagreements resulting from client's anxiety and emotional lability. Did I read that correctly? Erin, yes, you did. Okay, and do you recall that what Miss Heard reported to you in this regard? Erin, I don't recall specifics. Again, I remember there being sort of a general sense of anxiety in several sentences with Miss Heard, but I don't recall specifics. Okay, the next sentence says, client expressed concern to husband and Dr. Kipper that she is nervous about being alone while husband is working on a movie set in London, and expressed she has difficulty dealing with feelings of insecurity and jealousy when not in the presence of her husband. Did I read that right? Erin, yep. Do you recall learning this during your initial meeting with Miss Heard? Erin, I don't recall learning this during the initial meeting, but again, when I initially met Miss Heard and Mr. Depp, it was fairly brief because then after that we traveled to London. So I don't recall if I learned this instantaneously or if this was gathered, throughout the next day or two, spending time with her. Is this description of Miss Heard having feelings of insecurity and jealousy when not in the presence of Mr. Depp, is consistent with your recollection when you were treating Miss Heard? Erin, I wouldn't say all the time that was an issue. I have a very vague sense of those issues popping up throughout the years, but I wouldn't say that was a constant theme. But you do have recollections of that being an issue at some time when you were treating her? Erin, I would say that's a fair statement. Okay, if we could just go to the next page, please. And then, this paragraph at the top here that starts with RN met with CT and her husband JD at their home in Los Angeles. First of all, based on your note-taking convention, do you understand that this would have been on August 27th, 2014, which is the date that's on the first page there? And we can scroll up if that would help. Erin, thank you. And just so you guys are aware of why my eyes are darting, I'm looking at the same document on page form. Jessica, if you could be easier for the hard copy, that's fine. Okay, so to answer your question, you're asking if this note at the top of what we're looking at now is that reference to August 27, 2014. Erin answered yes. Okay, so does this refresh your recollection about the first time that you would have met Miss Heard? Erin, maybe somewhat. Again, I have vague recollection of meeting her, and like I stated earlier, it was sort of brief, seemingly pleasant experience. Would this have been the first time that you ever met Mr. Depp? Erin, yep, that's correct. Okay, so in the middle of the paragraph, it says current medications include neurotonin, 100 milligrams, and melatonin, 20. Okay. Do you see where I'm referring to here? Erin, yes, I do. Okay. First, I'd like to go through a couple of things. First of all, what's neurotonin? Erin, I don't know if I should answer. Mr. Nadelhaft said it calls for an expert, and Erin said, I agree. I think I would have to refer to a medication manual Have a physician answer that question to give you specifics. Okay, Jessica. Do you have any understanding of why Ms. Heard was taking neurotonin? Erin, my best guess would be to treat anxiety. Again, that might be a question for Dr. Kipper, as he was the prescribing physician. Okay, based on your experience treating Ms. Heard, you know what Provigil is. Erin, I haven't worked with that medication probably since this time period. I believe I remember why we used it, but I can't say 100%. What's your belief, understanding that you're not certain? Erin, my belief is this medication is used for ADD. Again, I would refer to as an expert or at least the prescribing physician to be certain. Do you recall why you were treating Ms. Heard if she was taking a drug called Accutane? Erin, that doesn't sound unfamiliar, but I don't recall specific details of use. Do you recall Ms. Heard ever reporting any side effects from her medication regime? Erin, I don't recall specifically. However, in reading some of these notes in preparation for deposition today, I do recall reading something about complaints of perhaps lethargy or fatigue, maybe in relation to the neurotonin, however the hell you say it. I would have to scan back through to give you an accurate answer on that one. Okay, let's go to the entry for August 29th, 2014. And before we get to the specifics, is this typical layout for your nursing notes with the dates and what have been believed are times next to the entries? Erin, yep, that's typical. Okay, and so does the date indicate day that the events in the entry occurred or the date that you actually took the note? Erin, it refers to the dates of the event occurred, not that I necessarily took the note. Okay, and for clarity's sake, the numbers here like 1045, 1400, that's the time. That's the approximate time of the events reflected in the entry? Erin, correct. Okay, relative to the date reflected to an entry, when would you typically prepare these notes? Erin, as we discussed earlier, sometimes I would take them as soon as immediately after my interaction with the client. Sometimes it wouldn't be until later, depending on when I was able to get to my laptop or make the documentation, based on how much we were traveling, where we were at the time. Okay, so in this note, I'd like to direct your attention to the section that starts with 2345 and specifically the first sentence, and it says, client RN and Debbie RN went to dinner together. Do you see that? Erin, I do. And Debbie RN is Debbie Lloyd, is that correct? Erin, that's correct. Do you remember the specific dinner? Erin, I don't remember the specific dinner. We would sometimes go to dinner, so there were several occasions, so I don't remember this specific one. Okay, now, all right, so directing your attention to the next couple of sentences, it says, client demonstrates good appetite, drinks 2 to 3 glasses of wine, no water, consumes that CT prefers only bottled water. RN encourages CT to adequately hydrate upon returning to a hotel where bottled water is available. CT agrees to do so and verbalizes understanding for necessity of adequate hydration, especially due to the dehydration effects of wine and also medication regime. Do you see that? Erin, yep. What aspects of Ms. Heard's medication regime were dehydrating, if you can recall? Erin, I don't remember. The next portion here says, RN also educates client on alcohol intake, that alcohol intake can affect prescribed medication, including new medication Latuda. CT states she understood but continues to consume wine. Do you see that? Erin, yep. Do you have any understanding of how alcohol could affect medications Ms. Heard was taking at that time? Erin, again, I don't recall specifics. I think, as we discussed earlier, I would typically educate clients best I could with the knowledge that I had at the time. So at the time, I probably had a better understanding. I haven't worked with that specific medication in several years. Why did you note that Ms. Heard continued to drink wine after the discussion? Erin, I don't remember. I'm going down a couple of sentences here. It says, client verbalizes feeling of confusion as she feels fiance would like her to eliminate acting career and stay home. Do you see that? Erin, yep. I didn't hear you. Did you see? Yes, she does. Okay, great. Do you remember having a specific conversation with Ms. Heard? Erin, I don't remember specifically, but I do have a general recollection. Do you recall why Ms. Heard strike that? Do you recall why Ms. Heard expressed to you about her feelings that Mr. Depp would like her to eliminate her acting career? Erin, no, I don't recall specifics. Did you ever have any discussions with Mr. Depp concerning Ms. Heard's acting career? Erin, I've had sorts of vague general memory of discussing that before. As to specific dates, I don't think I can provide with those specifics, but it does sound familiar. Did you ever have the impression that Mr. Depp wanted Ms. Heard to stop or end her acting career? Erin, I don't recall that being a sentiment. If we can scroll down to the entry for September 2nd, 2014. Now I'd like to direct your attention to the sentence in the middle of the entry. It says, RN and CT discuss CT's history and current relationship. CT reports difficulty with jealousy, issues, and anxiety around fiance's fame and ability to interact with females often. Did I read that correctly? Erin, yep. And that's a note you wrote, correct? Erin, yep. Do you recall Miss Heard expressing this sentiment to you? Erin, again, like we discussed earlier, I don't recall that specifically. I do have a general sense of jealousy, anxiety issues popping up throughout the years, but I don't remember that specific discussion to give you anything deeper than that. And these jealousy issues would arise during your treatment of Miss Heard. Would you document them in your notes? Erin, I would say that it's fair to say that yes, sometimes I would document that, and I can't say that every instance of everything we discussed or come along with goes into the nursing notes for the reason that were previously stated. Ms. Meyers, let's please move on to the entry for September 4th, 2014. Now, I would like you to direct your attention, this is also in the middle, it says CT ate dinner with RN at 2100 at restaurant. Erin, sorry, just one sec, let me catch up with you. Okay, yes, I'm sorry. Okay. Jessica, CT became frustrated with the wait staff over miscommunication. CT calmly repeated herself to staff to resolve the issue. CT expressed frustration after conflict to RN. RN reflected change in coping mechanisms as CT previous coping skills involved impulsive anger and yelling. Did I read that correctly? Erin, yep. Okay, do you recall this incident at all? Erin, I wouldn't have said that I remembered this in preparation for the deposition when I was reading through the notes. I've sort of a vague memory of this, but I think my notes here are probably more specific than what I can actually remember. Is there anything that you remember that's not reflected in these notes? Erin, no. When you say client's previous coping skills involved impulsive anger and yelling, do you know what you're referring to? Erin, I don't know exactly. I would make the assumption based on my previous notes that it was an issue, that when an issue had arisen, had been around previously, that she was attempting to treat when I came on board. This is an issue that you observed yourself? Erin, no, again, like we talked about earlier, the one time I remember being present for, witnessing Miss Heard having anger outbursts was the time in London, 2014, after her phone was hacked, but other than that, I didn't witness it. Ms. Meyers, let's actually go to entry for September 21st, 2014. And please take a moment and review this. And once you're done, the question is, does this note reflect the incident in London that you just referred to? Erin, to answer your question, yes, this is what I'm referring to. Jessica, it says down here at the bottom of the notes, client's fiance offered emotional support. Is that accurate to your recollection? Erin, I don't recall. I would have referred to my nursing notes, that that's probably a lot more reliable than my current memory. I believe you testified earlier, though, that you recall Mr. Depp was present at this occasion. Is that right? Erin, that's correct. Okay, now if we move on to the entry for September 22nd. So this note begins, strike that. This starts with at 1 o'clock. It says 1 o'clock in the morning on September 22nd. Erin, yeah, that's correct. Okay, and it starts, RN notified that client requires assistance. Upon arrival, client noted to appear irritable, loud, and angry. Client screaming at times and appears agitated. Client crying and states she got into a verbal argument with fiancé after RN departure. Does this refresh your recollection at all about Miss Heard having an outburst? Erin, I don't know that it refreshes my memory. I would say it reflects my memory. Is this the same outburst in London that you've been previously referring to? Erin, yep, that's correct. Do you recall anything about what the fight had between Mr. Depp and Miss Heard was about that reflected in that note? Erin, I don't recall. I remember a general sense that Miss Heard was being very upset that her phone was hacked because there was very sensitive information that was leaked from it, and I feel like she was having a difficult time calming after that. So whether there was any verbal disagreement, I assume it's in relation to that, but I just don't remember the specifics of what the disagreement was about. Okay, it says here, client states that she feels fiancé did not provide support to client. Did I read that right? Erin, yep. Okay, is that consistent with your recollection? Erin, I didn't recall that, but again, I would state that my notes are much more reliable than my current memory, and I think that probably speaks to your previous question. Let's please go to the entry of February 18th, 2015, which is on the page, Bates number 16950. Erin, Jessica, when Major just requests that you finish or whatever is a good time just for a brief break. Okay, so they go on a break and now they're back. Okay, so Miss Meyers. Okay, so turning to the entry on February 18th, 2015, I'd like to just direct your attention to this bit at the bottom. It says, client admits to RN that she has fired her assistant Kate. RN asked RN asks client how she is feeling about termination, but client does not respond. Do you recall that? Do you recall Miss Heard telling you that she had fired her assistant? Erin, I don't recall a specific incident where she told me she had fired Kate, but I remember that happening. Had you met Kate before this, before she was terminated? Erin, yes. How many times would you say? Erin, I don't recall, but several. And you observed Miss Heard interact with Kate before? Erin, yes. I can recall being in the presence of both Miss Heard and Kate simultaneously. And this is Kate Jacobs, correct? Who the fuck is Kate Jacobs? It's Kate James. Oh my God. Anyway, we move on. Erin, I believe that's her name. That sounds familiar. And how would you describe Miss Heard and Kate's relationship from what you observed? Erin, I can't recall specifics. I remember there being sort of a general sense of, previous or before she was terminated. I don't think Miss Heard was happy with Kate's performance and assistant. And alternatively, I remember Kate complaining about Miss Heard, so it was kind of a finger pointing each way. And what? So the question is, what would Kate complain about? Erin, again, I can't remember specifics. I remember there's like a specific, my general maybe lack of respect that Kate felt. I'm not saying something I witnessed. I'm just speaking of what she expressed. And I think you alluded to this. You never actually witnessed the behavior that Kate was describing. Erin, correct. When I would see Miss Heard and Kate together, I didn't witness anything other than a sort of cordial interaction. Did Miss Heard ever end up telling you how she felt about terminating Kate? Erin, I remember a general sense of discussing that after the termination, but I don't recall the specific conversation. Let's please go to entries that are from March 7th, 2015. Oh, yes, please, which are on the page with the dates. Now, as you see, we looked at these entries earlier. Do you recall that? Erin, yes. Okay, now with respect to the entry for March 7th, 2015, it says, client notifies RN via text of increasing anxiety, reports emotional liability. Did you recall Ms. Heard reporting why she was feeling anxious at this time? Erin, no, I don't recall the specific reasons of why she was notifying me of that about that time. Here's the thing. I'm just going to stop it right here. This was the day 2 of 3-day not a hostage situation, day 2. So if she can reach out to her nurse and say, I'm feeling anxiety, she could also say to her nurse, he's holding me hostage. She didn't do that. That never fucking happened. Onward we go. So it says here that she notified you via text, right? Erin, correct. If Miss Heard had in those messages relayed the reason, would that have been reflected in this note? Erin, as we discussed, sometimes I included specifics within the document of the nursing notes, but often there were too many issues around all the time to include everything. So if it's not included, it probably reflects that I've already spoken to the treatment team, specifically Dr. Kipper, in regards to whatever issues are discussed at that time. Okay, it says here, client reports self-admin additional Seroquel 12.5 milligrams at 4:30 due to insomnia. Do you see that? Erin, yes. Generally speaking, what is Seroquel? Erin, Seroquel, if I haven't worked with in many years, so I can't give you an educated answer on that. Okay, directing your attention to the next note on March 8th, 2015. And I know you discussed this with Adam earlier, so I won't be too much, but do you recall at this time of entry on March 8th, 2015, Miss Heard was in Australia? Erin, I would make that assumption based upon my note for March 8th. I state that client will be returning to Los Angeles accompanied by house manager Ben. I'm paraphrasing there, but yes, I believe she was coming home from Australia for this particular entry. And I think you testified before that you don't recall what Debbie Lloyd reported to you in the state. Erin, right. I don't recall specifics of what I would assume we had a phone conversation based on what we discussed previously. It says here, RN plans to meet client upon arrival. Do you see that? Erin, oh yes, I do. And I think you testified to this earlier. Did you see Miss Heard the next day when she arrived back in Los Angeles? Is that correct? Erin, that's correct. If you look at the entry for March 9th, I referred to meeting her and her friends. So yes, I would have met her in person that day. Do you recall how long you spent with Miss Heard that following day? Erin, I don't recall. My note states that I met her for dinner at 2200, which military time would be 10 p.m. I don't recall how long I was with her, so I would assume a couple of hours, but again, I'm just making an assumption. Do you recall observing any injuries to Miss Heard when you saw her on March 9th, 2015? Erin, nope, I don't recall. I don't make note of it, but I don't recall either. If Miss Heard had visible injuries, is that something you would have documented in your nursing notes? Erin, I would assume so. If Miss Heard had any visible injuries, that's something you think you would have remembered? Erin, I don't know. Do you recall whether Miss Heard sought any medical treatment from you on March 9th, 2015? Erin, sorry, you have to repeat that question. I missed the first part. Do you recall Miss Heard seeking any medical treatment from you when you saw her on March 9th, 2015? Erin, I don't recall. If Miss Heard had sought medical treatment from you on that date, is that something you would have documented in your notes? Erin, perhaps if there were requests for medical treatment that differed from sort of day-to-day status, then yes, I might have put it in my notes if I hadn't discussed with Dr. Kipper, but I don't make any reference to it in this particular note. Do you recall anything else about Miss Heard's physical appearance on that date? Erin, nope. Could we please pull up what should be in? I think it should be uploaded as a document B, is Bates No Felati 10. I think we covered this before, but just to confirm, this is your email. At the top, it says, okay, great, thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. I'd like to direct your attention down to the email from David Kipper on March 9th, 2015. It starts out, Erin, I love you, too. Do you recognize this email? Erin, I believe I produced this in reference to the subpoena. Do you recall receiving this email? Erin, I don't recall, but I do remember reviewing this. But I don't think I reviewed it in preparation for today, but probably at the time of the document request. I think I probably reviewed this. Drawing your attention to the middle of the email, do you see where it says, I'm sure JD will let you know when we are coming home. I want her to please not see him for a few days until we can get him organized with the hand surgeon and get him his meds balanced. Do you see that? Erin, yes. Okay, and JD refers to Mr. Depp in this instant. Erin, yes. And the her is Miss Heard? Erin, yes. Did you have an understanding at the time as to why Dr. Kipper didn't want Miss Heard to see Mr. Depp for a few days? Erin, I don't recall exactly. This might have been in reference to Australia when meeting Mr. Depp and Miss Heard, we're separated. I would have to check on the dates on that. Well, returning back to your notes, where Miss Heard was returning back from Australia in March 9th, 2015, does that orient you? Erin, yes, thank you. Yeah, that would be the same time period. Okay, and you alluded to an understanding that Dr. Kipper wanted Mr. Depp and Miss Heard separated. Erin, yes. And what was your understanding as to why they should be separated? Erin, I don't recall specifics. I wasn't present in Australia at that time. I just remember a general sense of big argument happening and the treatment team deciding that they should not be around each other. So Miss Heard returned to Los Angeles and Mr. Depp stayed in Australia. For how long? I don't recall. Next bit here, it says, please use the excuse that Dr. Kipper insists that JD stay quiet without any distraction for the rest of the week while we get his medication organized and balanced. None of this will be accepted by her, but I will be very upset, you can tell her this, if there is any stress created by a visit that is premature. Do you see that? Erin, yes. Do you have any understanding as to why Dr. Kipper was directing you to provide this excuse to Miss Heard? Erin, again, just a general sense that there was a major argument in Australia, which I wasn't present for, and separating because of that. Did you have any understanding as to why Dr. Kipper stated that none of this will be accepted by Miss Heard? Erin, I would be speculating on that, but we use joking terminology. In March of 2015, you'd been treating Miss Heard for almost a year. Is that right? Or actually, no, that's not correct. You started treating Miss Heard August 2014, correct? Erin, that's correct. Just to clarify, I'm sorry. No. She's like, I just want to make it. So Erin, I just want to make it clear. I wasn't always full time with her, especially this time period when we were discussing right now. I think you can see from what we've been discussing that I was not with Miss Heard, and I was not with Miss Heard, Mr. Depp, who were in Australia at the time. I was based back in LA at that time. Okay, understood. Based on your experience treating Miss Heard at this time in March of 2015, would you agree or did you agree with Dr. Kipper that Miss Heard would not accept not seeing Mr. Depp for a period of time? Wanted to know if she could read it again. Erin, I don't know specifically, as I think I talked about much earlier this morning. There was generally a sense of arguing, reconciling, and that sort of cycle happening frequently throughout their relationship. And the next sentence says, please reiterate to her that I want her to see Cowan every day if she can go. If she can this week, to help her organize her thoughts and take accountability for her part in the fight before she sees him. Do you see that? Erin, yes. Now, who is Cowan? Erin, that would be in reference to Dr. Cowan. I don't recall his first name at this time. He was Miss Heard's therapist, I believe, at that time. At this time, did you have any understanding as to why Dr. Kipper wanted Miss Heard to see Dr. Cowan that week? Erin, I think in general sense, it was always encouraged that she continue her relationship with Dr. Cowan because I think he was her treating therapist that would assist her with relationship, emotional support issues, things like that. Do you have any understanding of why at this time on March 9th, 2015, Dr. Kipper was encouraging Miss Heard to see Dr. Cowan every day for a week if possible? Erin, I don't recall this. Like I said earlier, I don't recall the specifics of this. I wasn't there. But looking at this notation, I think that's in reference to the argument that occurred in Australia. If we could please go back to the nursing notes, which are Exhibit 2, can we please go back to the entries for March 2015 that are on the page with Bates number of da-da-da-da-da? Now, we covered this earlier, but it says in your March 9th, 2015 entry, it says, client states she would like to discuss recent events between her and husband with RN in private tomorrow. Do you see that? Erin, oh yeah, I do. And I believe you testified earlier that you did in fact meet with Miss Heard on the next day, correct? Erin, I think I met her that day, March 9th, according to. So this is an entry for March 9th, and it says, client states she would like to discuss recent events between her and her husband with RN in private tomorrow. Erin, yes. So do you recall that you did actually have that private conversation with her the next day? Erin, I don't recall. Okay, directing your attention to the entry for March 10th, 2015. It says, RN met client at home at 1600. Does that refresh your recollection that you did meet with her that day? Erin, no, it doesn't refresh my recollection. However, I would refer to my nursing note. And you have no reason to doubt that this nursing note is accurate. Erin, can you rephrase that, I think? Do you have any reason to doubt that these notes are accurate? Erin, no. And I believe you testified to this earlier. You don't recall the specifics of that meeting with Miss Heard on March 10th, 2015. Erin, I don't. Do you recall whether Miss Heard showed any injuries to you at that time? Erin, no. I don't recall any injuries. Do you recall when you first saw Mr. Depp after he returned from Australia in March of 2015? Erin, no, I don't recall when I first saw him upon his return. And going along with that, just in reference to your question that you asked, you referenced March 2015. I wouldn't even been able to say if I saw him in March or April, but you might have better knowledge of that. And I think you testified earlier that you recall Mr. Depp did have an injury to his finger upon returning from Australia, correct? Erin, correct. And do you recall Mr. Depp wearing a cast at any point in connection with that injury? Erin, I remember there being a wrap. I can't remember if it was a cast involved as well. I can probably read through the notes to see if I make any mention of that. When you say wrap, is that like a soft cast or like... Erin, I mean it's like a stretched bandage that's put around a splint. So just meaning that I can't confirm if it was a cast or a splint, perhaps both. I just don't recall the specifics. Okay, and just to confirm, I think you testified to this earlier. You don't have any understanding as to how Mr. Depp's finger was injured. Erin, right. I just remember that being an injury that he returned with whenever he returned from Australia. Well, let's please go to the entry here, March 25th, 2015. And again, I think we covered a lot of this earlier, so I will try not to cover ground that we've already covered. You know what? Actually, to try to be most effective, would you mind if we just took 5 minutes just so I can collect here and try not to waste everyone's time by going over what Adam already did? So they took a little break and they're back. Mr. Nadelhaft. So Exhibit 14 was Felati 134. I appear to have I appear to only have up to Felati 127. I've asked I think my people, and they don't see anything above that. I guess the one thing I was just wondering is how far up do you have the production of Felati documents, and were the documents produced after 127? Jessica, I do not know that off the top of my head. I can tell you, obviously, we have through Felati 134. Nadelhaft, is 134 the last? Was 134 the highest that you know of? Jessica, I don't know. Mr. Nadelhaft, Robert, do you know by any chance? Mr. McKenna, I'm not paying attention to your exhibits. Mr. Nadelhaft, no, the production on Exhibit 14, it was Felati 134. I have a production up to 127. I didn't know if you saw anything beyond, if you had anything beyond that. Mr. McKenna, the only thing that I have is what your co-defense and counsel has and who was also with the former counsel of my client. So other than that, I don't have anything new for you. It is what it is, and you guys can sort it out. I'd like to get this deposition finished. Mr. Nadelhaft, I'm not. Listen, this was just taking me a minute or two. I just wanted to ask you if you knew. That's all I was asking. If you don't know, you don't know. That's fine. I just wanted to know you didn't produce anything, correct? Mr. McKenna, no, that was handled by Gordon and Reese. Mr. Nadelhaft, okay, all right, fair enough. Go ahead, Miss Meyers. Miss Meyers, could we please pull up Felati Exhibit 4? Miss Felati, I think we looked at this text message earlier today, correct? Erin, yes, correct. And you recognize this as a text message between you and Whitney Heard, correct? Erin, yep. And these are from March 23rd, 2015, yes? Erin, yes. Now, I believe you had an opportunity to read through all of these text messages, right? Erin, yeah, this morning when we reviewed those. And it's fair to say these text messages reflect that on March 23rd, 2015, you went to see Miss Heard after speaking with Whitney, correct? And we can scroll through these again. Erin, yeah, if you could scroll down just to confirm. Erin, so yes, it appears that I'm making reference to driving there, so it looks like I arrive and would have visited Miss Heard on what day is that, March 23rd, 2015? Do you recall actually seeing Miss Heard on that date? Erin, no, not at this time. Is it possible that you arrived and didn't end up seeing her? Erin, you're asking if I would have these texts but not have seen her. I'm asking, is it possible that you arrived and didn't end up seeing her? Erin, I guess that's possible. I don't recall that though. Okay, and I believe you were asked a couple of questions about this earlier. This text message from Whitney at 14:39 that says, safe? No, she's not. She keeps saying she wants to delete herself. I took her meds and hid them. Do you see that? Erin, I do. And you said you don't recall receiving this text message, right? Erin, no, I don't. And you don't recall learning from Whitney Heard that Amber was saying she wanted to remove herself, correct? Erin, I don't recall this. I don't recall this text conversation. Do you have any recollection of Miss Heard ever in the time you treated her saying that she wanted to delete herself? Erin, no, I don't recall that. We can go back to Exhibit 2, which is the nursing notes, and specifically the entry from March 25th, 2015. So do you see this nursing entry from March 25th, 2015? Erin, yeah. And it starts, client and RN in contact throughout the day via text and phone conversations. Client expresses uncertainty regarding relationship with fiancé, states she is concerned about ability to trust fiancé following argument on March 23rd, 2015. Do you see that? Erin, yep. And March 23rd, 2015, is that the same date as those text messages we just looked at, correct? That are Exhibit 4? Erin, correct. Okay, and so further down in this note, maybe two-thirds of the way down, it says RN offers to visit client, but client declines, but requests RN to visit on March 27th, 2015 to assist in travel preparations. RN agrees to do so. Do you see that? Erin, yeah, I see that. Do you have any recollection of seeing Miss Heard between March 23rd and March 27th, 2015? Erin, as I'm sitting here right now, I don't have recollection of that specific date period. We'll go back to the next page, please. Do you see the portion of this entry that says 2300 Debbie RN notified RN that CT and her fiance were having verbal altercation at home. RN attempted to contact client via phone and text. Do you see that? Erin, yeah. So to your understanding, is this a different argument than the one that occurred on March 23rd, 2015? Erin, to answer your question, I don't have a specific recollection. However, as this entry was made on the 25th of March, I'm using verbiage that was talking about it in the present tense. So I would assume it's a separate incident Excuse me, I forgot what was on the other date, March 23rd, the 23rd. Erin, right, I believe so it appears to be that I don't have specific recollection of that. Do you have any recollection of Debbie reaching out to you about that incident? Erin, Debbie and I were in frequent contact with one another just based on our trading relationship with both clients. So yes, we were in touch frequently. I'm not sure I recall what this specific argument was about. Sorry, my memory fails me. No, that's okay. Based on this note and your recollection, is it your understanding that Debbie was present when the altercation described had occurred? Erin, I don't have any memory of this specific date, and my note for this specific date doesn't necessarily imply that, so I can't confirm that. If we could just go back up to the top of the entry for March 25th, I just want to ask you one more part of this. It states that she is concerned about ability to trust fiancé following argument on 23rd. Do you have any recollection of Miss Heard expressing concern about her ability to trust Mr. Depp? Erin, I would say I have a generalized memory of there being, as I stated before, jealousy and anxiety issues, including mistrust within the relationship. Do you recall Miss Heard ever telling you that she thought Mr. Depp was cheating on her? Erin, no, I don't recall that specifically. I just, as I said, a general sense of remembering jealousy being an issue. Okay, do you recall talking about visiting Miss Heard and Mr. Depp for Thanksgiving earlier today? Erin, yeah. Okay, I believe you testified that you recall Miss Heard's father being present at that Thanksgiving dinner. Erin, yes. Have you ever met Miss Heard's father before that date? Erin, I don't recall if I've met him previous to that date. Do you recall meeting him on other than that occasion? Erin, yeah, I feel like I remember meeting him one more time on that occasion. And do you recall whether he was drinking on Thanksgiving? Erin, I don't recall. Do you recall whether Mr. Depp's son Jack was at the Thanksgiving dinner? Erin, I don't remember. Does anything stand out in your mind as from that Thanksgiving dinner that you can recall? Erin, nothing really stands out other than I sort of have a general sense of being a really joyful and fun time together. You know what? I'm just having a hard time believing that, because Manson was there and she had never met Manson before. Would you not remember meeting Manson for the first time and like your first impression of him, and maybe you had misconceived notions of him? Like, wouldn't you remember that? I don't know. I think I would remember that. I don't know. It's just me. Anyway, just my thoughts on that. Okay, where the fuck was I? Okay, does anything stand out in your mind as from that Thanksgiving dinner that you can recall? Okay, Erin, nothing really stands out other than it was, okay, Do you recall how long you stayed at the dinner? Erin, not specifically, I would assume a few hours. Could we please just quickly go to the note from November? This is an Exhibit 2, entry from November 26, 2015. Ms. Felati, directing your attention to the entry for November 26, 2015. You recall seeing this entry earlier today? Erin, yep. And I believe you testified that this is the entry from the Thanksgiving dinner that you spent with Miss Heard and Mr. Depp? Erin, I believe it is. Okay, do you see in the middle where it says JD appeared calm and coherent? Erin, I do. Is that accurate to your recollection of that evening? Erin, again, I don't remember that specifically, but I just remember a general sense of being a fun, happy evening. So this is consistent with your recollection of that evening. Erin, I would make that assumption. You have no reason to doubt the accuracy of your note, correct? Erin, correct. Could we please go down to the entry for December 16th and 17th of 2015? I think is the next page. Ms. Felati, do you recall earlier today testifying about an incident in December 2015 in which you learned from Ms. Heard that there had been an altercation between her and Mr. Depp? Erin, yep. Okay. Directing your attention to the December 17th, 2015 entry, will you just take a minute and read it over and confirm whether, strike that, do you recall going and visiting Ms. Heard on December 17th, 2015? Erin, I remember in so much as my nursing notes regarding this. I can't say that I recall much more than I have here, but I do remember visiting her. It says here that client had visible bright red blood appearing in the center of her lower lip. Do you see that? Erin, yeah. Did you, other than the blood on Miss Heard's lip, do you recall seeing other injuries to Miss Heard on that date? Erin, I don't recall other than what I state. Did you recall examining Miss Heard's lip at all? Erin, I don't think I examined it other than a visual examination. I didn't physically examine her lip. Do you recall having an impression as to why her lip was bleeding? Erin, as my note states, Miss Heard said it was from an injury from an argument between her and Mr. Depp. So, do you recall having any reason to doubt what was the cause of the blood on her lip? Erin, well, I have to take a client's report at face value until I find out information otherwise. Did you find information that contradicted this report? Erin, I'm not sure I understand. Did I find some information? Could you restate that? Sure. Did you ever learn of anything that gave you reason to doubt Miss Heard's report that her lip was bleeding because of an injury sustained by Mr. Depp? Erin, I don't recall. I think continuing with my note on this date, I made reference to encouraging her to be seen by Dr. Kipper or an emergency room care. So no, I don't recall anything other than that. The note says here, client also stated her head is bruised and that she lost clumps of hair in altercation. Arm briefly looked at client's scalp, but was unable to visualize hematoma client had described. Is that what you wrote in your notes? Erin, yep. If you had observed the bruises or hematomas that Miss Heard had described, what would have been reflected in your note? Erin, I would assume, but again, I'm not trained in looking for those types of injuries, which is why my note continues that I encourage her to be seen by a professional that's trained to do so. Can we drop down to the next page? And this is just the end portion of this note. It says here, RN reminds client to hydrate with oral fluids and to abstain from alcohol. Client was consuming red wine when RN left, but assured RN she would consume in moderation. Is that what you wrote in your note? Erin, it is, and I believe I miswrote there. Probably it should say client was consuming red wine when RN left, not with, just to clarify. Why would you advise Miss Heard on this occasion to limit, or why did you advise Miss Heard to abstain from alcohol on this occasion? Erin, I don't recall why I would be speaking to or abstain from alcohol on this occasion. Can we please pull up document D, which I believe will be Felati Exhibit 15? Just for the record, the document I'm about to show, we should go to 83rd page of the document, which is the beginning of Exhibit 13 to Miss Heard's April 10th, 2019 declaration in this action. Miss Felati, we can just slowly scroll down through the first 6 pictures of this exhibit. Okay, if we can back the last one. Okay, have you ever seen Miss Heard as she's depicted in these photographs? Erin, I'm not positive I understand. You mean without makeup or in what sense? Let me ask for a more specific question. Do you see that it appears to be a mark under her right eye? Erin, under her right eye, there appears to be. Have you ever seen Miss Heard in person with marks under her eye? Erin, I don't recall seeing that in person. I don't recall. Do you recall seeing Miss Heard with that mark on December 17th, 2015? Erin, may I just read through my notes quickly to see if I saw her on that date? What was the date again? I'm sorry. December 17th, 2015. The date of the note we're just looking at. Erin, yeah, I'm sorry. You said December 17th, 2000. Oh, I must be in the wrong year. That's why. Yes, I recalled that meeting. Okay. Do you recall whether Miss Heard had this mark under her eye when she saw you on December 17th, 2015? Erin, I don't recall. If you had seen that mark, would you have recorded it in your notes? Erin, I would assume so, but I don't make reference to it. Do you think that you would recall Miss Heard having this type of mark under her eye? Erin, I don't know one way or the other. I don't know if I saw that. It's not in reference or it's not in my nursing notes, so I can't confirm. So to confirm, based on your nursing notes, you were aware that Miss Heard claimed to have been injured by Mr. Depp in December of 2015, correct? Erin, correct. And you went and actually saw her shortly after that alleged incident, correct? Erin, not that same day, but possibly the following day, I believe. And on that occasion, you would observe that she did have a bloody lip, correct? Erin, correct. And she told you it was a result of the altercation with Mr. Depp. Erin, correct. If she had any other injuries on that occasion, would you have recorded them in your nursing notes? Erin, I would make the assumption based on that my other notes reference the blood on her lip. Okay, can we go up to the next photograph, please? First of all, who's depicted in this picture? Erin, Miss Heard. Do you see any marks on her face? Erin, I don't see on this picture I'm looking at. Can we go to the next page, please? We can actually skip this one and go to the next one. Who's depicted in this picture? Erin, Miss Heard. And do you see any marks on her face in this picture? Erin, I see under her right eye the seemingly same mark that we looked at in the previous photo. Anything else? Erin, not from my end of the picture I'm looking at. Can we go to the next picture, please? Okay, this is Miss Heard again, yes? Erin, yep. And do you see there appears to be blood on her lip in this picture? Erin, yes, I do. Is that consistent with the strike that? Did you see Miss Heard's lip looking like this when you saw her on December 17th, 2015? Erin, I can't say for certain that the blood I observed was coming from the exact same location as what we're seeing here in the photo. But I do remember there being bright red blood similar to that. I just don't recall the exact location on the lips. Okay. And if we can just jump to the last page on this exhibit, which I believe is the 95th page, your notes reflect that you did examine Miss Heard's scalp on December 17th, right? Erin, I believe so. Yep, that's correct. Did you see any discoloration on her scalp, like what is reflected in this picture? Erin, I don't recall, so I would refer to my notes, which states I am unable to visualize the hematomas the client described. Okay, it says here RN received phone call from client and husband JD. RN was confused regarding the client, what client and husband were asking, and client AH told RN they were going to hang up. Client AH later texted RN and stated that she and husband JD had reconciled but then argued about the argument last week. Did I read that correctly? Erin, yes. Do you recall receiving this phone call described in this notes? Erin, yes. I have some memory of receiving a phone call and I was not with them at the time, obviously. I can't remember where I was. I might have been at another client, perhaps, but I remember that I was actively doing something when I received that phone call. Do you remember anything else about this content of this phone call? Erin, I don't. I think my note sort of reflects my memory of that. Can we please pull up document F, which I believe I uploaded recently, and I believe it'll be Felati Exhibit 17. Okay, and this is just for a little bit of background. I believe you saw text messages between you and Mr. Depp earlier today, but can you please just confirm that this number here that it says Erin, parenthesis Erin, is your phone number? Erin, yep, that's correct. Okay, and I will represent to you that these are text messages between you and Mr. Depp. And so can we please go to the 8th page of the document, which is Depp 8021. And so I'm directing your attention to the entry that has a 66 next to it. And it appears to be a text message from Mr. Depp to you on March 27th, 2016. Do you see that? Erin, yes, I do. Okay. And do you see that Mr. Depp writes, our little girl has a fairly decent bloody nose. I've laid her down, head back with eyes around sinus area. Any instructions? Do you remember receiving this text message from Mr. Depp? Erin, no, I don't. Who do you understand Mr. Depp to be referring to as little girl? Erin, I would assume he's referring to Miss Heard, but I'm not positive. Yeah, it could have been Lily Rose. It could have been Lily Rose. In the time you were caring for Miss Heard, did she often get bloody noses? Erin, I don't recall. Okay, so other than what is reflected here, you don't recall her ever having a bloody nose in the time that you treated her. Erin, correct? Okay, could we take a short break? Okay, taking a short break, and then we're back. And just for the record, while we're being uploaded, is Felati 90. Miss Felati, if you could just read through the text messages on the first 2 pages of this document and just let me know when you're done with that. Okay, she's done. And if we could just scroll up, do you see that this text message here is from December 21st? Erin, yep, that's correct. Okay, and do you recall before we went off a little bit earlier, we talked about you receiving a phone call from Ms. Heard and Mr. Depp on December 21st, 2015? Erin, yeah. Okay, can we go back down to this text message so we can see the entire thing? Is this text message in white here? Is that from Ms. Heard? Erin, yep. Do you recall receiving this text message? Erin, I don't recall receiving it, but it didn't sound unfamiliar when I was producing this document. Do you know what the text message is in reference to? Erin, based on the date, perhaps December 17th, I think, but not positive. She says here, it was more about that my head was injured. JD's big thing is that he didn't do anything. And then I said, many people were witness to the results, physically and psychologically. He said, oh yeah, call Erin then, that kind of thing. Is this when phone call here is referenced in the call received December 21st? Erin, just so I can clarify, you're asking if this particular text is in reference to a phone call on December 21st that we were just speaking of? Erin, yes. Or sorry, Jessica, yes. Erin, okay, yes, I believe so. Okay, does this refresh your recollection as to the contents of the phone call at all? Erin, again, I don't remember the specifics. I remember my nursing note, I think accurately reflects sort of my memory of it as it's sort of an undefined phone call where I remember both of them sort of speaking on the phone and not truly understanding what the gist of it, the reason why they were calling me at that time. Does this seem to be a text message that you received after a phone call? Erin, based on the date and time and subject matter, I would make that assumption. I believe you testified earlier that you attended a dinner at Miss Heard's apartment for her birthday, her 30th birthday, in April of 2016, right? Erin, correct. Do you remember how many people were at that dinner? Erin, no. My best guess would be 10 to 15 people. Do you remember what you had for dinner? What they were serving that night? Erin, no. And could we go back to Exhibit 2 and the nursing notes for April 21st, 2016, which I'll get to the actual page number. So you already went through these notes in detail with Mr. Nadelhaft, so I won't do that. Just one portion I want to ask you about again, where it says, RN socialized with JD for 45 minutes. JD appeared coherent, oriented, and sociable. Thought process logical and clear. Do you have any reason to doubt that that's accurate, that that's an accurate description of Mr. Depp on that date? Erin, Jessica, I apologize. Can you just use your cursor to help me see the note? Okay. And she said, oh yeah, I see it. I'm sorry. What was your question? Oh shit. So she just said, yes, I agree to all of that. If Mr. Depp had appeared intoxicated on this occasion, is that something you would have documented? Erin, as if it had been outwardly visible for either client, I would have made reference to it. Can we please pull up Exhibit 16, which are the text messages between Mr. Depp and Ms. Felati? And could we please go to the 10th page, which is Depp 8023? And I'm going to specifically direct your attention to the text messages that are in rows 86 to 89, which are from April 30th, 2016. Do you see what I'm referring to? Erin, just to confirm, you said 86 through 89. Yes, I see that. Thank you. Why don't you take a moment and just read through it and let me know when you're done? Do you recognize these text messages between you and Mr. Depp? Erin, I don't recall these specific ones. I recall the issue. I recall the issues we're discussing. And what issue are you discussing? Erin, there was a bowel movement discovered in, I think, the client's bed at the downtown loft. And what did you and Mr. Depp discuss about this incident? Erin, I recall a general sense of Mr. Depp believing that either Miss Heard or perhaps her friend I.O. had produced that bowel movement. Do you recall why Mr. Depp thought that, or if he expressed why he thought that to you? Erin, I don't remember. Do you recall seeing that picture of that subject bowel movement? Erin, that sounds familiar. Were you aware that Miss Heard and Mr. Depp had 2 dogs, correct? Erin, correct. Fair to say they're pretty small dogs. Erin, fair to say they're very small. Do you recall the picture of, if you can recall it, do you recall the picture that you saw? Erin, I don't recall the picture. I just remember seeing it at some point, but I don't remember the details of it. Thank goodness. If we can go back to the nursing notes, Exhibit 2, please. And if we can go back down to entry for May 11th. Thank you. Now, Ms. Felati, we're looked at your earlier entry today. Erin said correct. And directing your attention to just a couple of lines down, it says, client discussed her birthday trip to Coachella Music Festival. Client admits to illicit drug use during the trip and states she ingested mushrooms and MDMA simultaneously while also consuming alcohol, and states she vomited and was, quote, high for at least 24 hours straight, end quote. Do you see that? Erin, yep, I see that. Did I read that correctly? Erin, yeah, you did. Do you recall, well, first of all, do you recall Ms. Heard relaying this to you? Erin, I don't recall these specifics that I state here in the note, but I remember sort of a conversation talking about the trip and after they returned. And this starts out, client admits to illicit drug use. So I'm correct that this is, based on these notes, this is something that Ms. Heard reported to you directly? Erin, again, I don't remember the specifics. However, my usage of client admits refers to client reporting something to me. Had Ms. Heard ever admitted to illicit drug use to you before this time? Erin, I believe in reference to my nursing notes from when I first met her, she alluded to previous substance abuse. So between the time you started treating her and May 11, 2016, did she ever admit to any other illicit drug use? Erin, I don't recall. It says here, RN reminded client that illicit drugs were not to be tolerated by medical staff, and any medications or drugs that are not prescribed can interfere and cause adverse effects with her prescription medication. Client laughed and also reported using illicit drugs, mushrooms, and MDMA on May 9th, 2016 at home with a high-profile man acquaintance. Did I read that correctly? Erin, you did. Do you recall Ms. Heard laughing in response to your reminder about illicit drug use? Erin, no, I don't recall that. Can you recall any other occasion in which Miss Heard laughed in response to your medical advice? Erin, no, I don't recall specific details of Miss Heard laughing in response to medical advice. Do you have any recollection of you feeling that Miss Heard wasn't taking medical advice seriously? Erin, I don't recall specifics, however, in the line of work I do, it's not uncommon for clients to disregard my medical advice. Who was the high-profile man acquaintance that Miss Heard referenced? Erin, sorry, could you repeat that? Who was the high-profile man acquaintance that referenced here? Erin, I don't recall. I see where it says that, and then it says the line says, client reported to that her husband was not aware of the male visitor nor her illicit drug use. Do you see that? Erin, yes, I do. Why did you include that in your nursing notes? Erin, I don't recall. I don't even recall who the visitor was. Now, if we can scroll down here, do you see that on May 26, 2016 is the last nursing entry in this document? Erin, yep. And I believe you testified earlier that you don't recall precisely when you stopped providing nursing care for Miss Heard. Erin, that's correct. I don't recall precisely when I stopped providing nursing care. And I think you testified earlier that you don't recall why your care for Miss Heard ended. Is that right? Erin, that's correct. That would not have been my decision to make. That would have been either the client's decision or the treating physician's decision, or both. Do you remember who told you that you would no longer be caring for Miss Heard? Erin, I do not know. Do you remember being told anything else about the termination of your nursing care for Miss Heard? Erin, not specifically. The only point I want to make is that by this time that we're referring to the end of these nursing notes here, I was only sporadically caring for Miss Heard, so it wasn't a huge transition to no longer providing care. It's not like I was going from 24/7 type care to nothing. It was very sporadic. And did you ever see Miss Heard again after you stopped providing nursing care? Erin, I don't recall. Did you ever speak with Miss Heard again after ending your nursing care for her? Erin, I don't have a memory of it. However, in the documents I produced, I believe there's text where I'm informing her of the birth of my first daughter, which would have been later, much later. I mean, I wouldn't say much later. I would say maybe about a year later. And then this last nursing note that I have. Other than the communication about the birth of your daughter, do you recall any specific communication with Miss Heard after your care for her was terminated? Erin, I'm going to check my notes because I just want to refresh my memory on the dates. Can you confirm what's in my mind right now is I remember speaking to her about the divorce, and I just don't remember the dates, if that's within the May 2016 that we're seeing or not. I can represent that Miss Heard filed in this 2016 time period. Erin, okay, that's sort of the last communication I remember discussing. A lot with her was the divorce proceeding and, what other legal actions were taken at that time. Do you recall anything about what you discussed with Miss Heard in connection with the divorce proceedings? Erin, just specifically or just general sense? Yeah, do you remember any of those communications with her? Erin, I don't remember exact, but I can say I just remember there was much turmoil about the divorce from both parties. I know as we looked before, it looked like Miss Heard filed for the divorce, but I remember it affecting her emotionally in the respect that she was feeling sad, confused, I'm sure at the time. Do you recall Miss Heard feeling unsure about filing for divorce from Mr. Depp? Erin, I don't recall that specifically. I think to say the same thing, there was a big theme of sort of back and forth in the relationship throughout the years. The divorce, I don't remember if she was unsure that it just happened, if those feelings were expressed to me afterwards. In your time caring for Miss Heard, did you ever see Mr. Depp physically abuse her? Erin, no. Did you ever see Miss Heard physically abuse Mr. Depp? Erin, no. Did you ever see Miss Heard throw anything at Mr. Depp in the time that you cared for her? Erin, no, I did not witness that. Okay, you clarified that you didn't witness that. Were you told that Miss Heard threw something at Mr. Depp? Erin, I remember hearing things being thrown. To be honest, I can't remember who I heard it from or which date, but I remember something about someone saying that she threw something towards Mr. Depp. Do you remember any other details about what they told you? Erin, I feel like it was a bottle. Again, sorry, I can't provide more specific details than that. As you said, it's a long time ago. Did anyone ever tell you that saw Mr. Depp abuse Miss Heard? Erin, other than Miss Heard? Yep. Erin, I don't remember specifically. I feel like her friends were reiterating that statement, but to be honest, I just don't remember the specific. Anyone other than her friends tell you that? Erin, not that I can recall. Did anyone ever tell you that they saw Miss Heard physically abuse Mr. Depp? Erin, the things that I spoke of just recently is what pops out of my mind is some incident of someone saying that she threw a bottle in the direction of Mr. Depp. Other than that, you can't recall any other instances? Erin, not specifically. Okay, in that time you treated her, did you ever see Miss Heard lose her temper? Erin, as we talked previously, the one incident that I remember in London 2014 in regards to the phone being hacked and sensitive material being hacked. Did you ever feel Miss Heard was hostile towards you at any time during your treatment of her? Erin, no. Did you ever feel Miss Heard was being unresponsive to you? Erin, I would agree. In fact, what sense? Did you ever feel she was ignoring attempts by you to contact her? Erin, yes, I have a general memory of I misspoke, of that happening on more than one occasion where I would reach out and not get a response. I just remember feeling frustrated by that. Did anything else strike that? Did you ever feel frustrated with Miss Heard for any other reason in the time that you treated her? Erin, I would say that my main frustration would be communication issues. After you stopped caring for Miss Heard, you continued to provide nursing care for Mr. Depp. Is that correct? Erin, yep. And was Debbie Lloyd no longer providing nursing care for Mr. Depp at this time? Erin, I just don't remember. Okay. Do you remember how often you would see Mr. Depp in person during this time? Erin, I know I saw him. I just can't tell you exact dates or how often. I believe you testified to this earlier. You recall learning at some point that Miss Heard had accused Mr. Depp of DV, right? Erin, yep. And I think you said you don't recall exactly when you learned. Is that right? Erin, that's correct. I think you also said you don't recall exactly how you learned that is, right? Erin, exactly, yep. Okay, can we please go back to Exhibit 16? Okay, could we please go to the 11th page? And specifically a text message from you to Mr. Depp on June 1st, 2016, which is entry 97. If you just want to take a look at that and let me know when you're done. She's done. Okay, do you remember sending this text to Mr. Depp? Erin, no, I don't. Do you know why you sent this text message to Mr. Depp? Erin, I don't recall sending this text, so I don't recall my reasoning behind it. You say, I just want to let you know that I'm sorry for what you are going through right now and that I'm sending my love and support. The truth will prevail. Stay strong. Call me if you need anything. Do you have any understanding of what you're referring to in that text message? Erin, going by the date here, I'm assuming the divorce. Is that right? And do you have any understanding of what you meant by the truth will prevail? Erin, no, I do not know. Could you please go to the 16th page of the document, which is Depp 8029, and specifically the message between you and Mr. Depp on August 16th, 2016, which are entries 1 through 4 through 1 through 7. Okay, she's finished reading. Do you remember this exchange with Mr. Depp? Erin, I do not remember the exchange. However, I remember hearing in reference to line 135 when I believe Mr. Depp says charges dropped for $7 million. I just remember that number being discussed. And what do you understand the $7 million being referred to? Erin, was that the divorce settlement, I think? Do you see in the entry line 136 where it says, it honestly makes me nauseous. I've treated true domestic violence victims, and let me tell you, they are happy just to escape with their life. They would never ask for money. When had you treated domestic violence victims prior to this time? Erin, the time that I worked with them was in the nursing school. I don't want to say the specific place for confidentiality reasons, but it was for domestic violence victims, sort of a safe house. So just so I understand, when you were in nursing school, you worked at a safe home for domestic violence victims? Erin, I should clarify, I was not employed directly. I was part of my scope of what we had to do in our clinical rotation. And how long did you work, or how long did you dedicate your time to that place? Erin, I don't recall. I would assume that was within a semester time period? What do you mean by I've treated true domestic violence victims in this context? Erin, right. I think I'm just discussing that time period that I worked with people at the safe house that I just spoke of. Just to be clear, though, this text message was in the context of you and Mr. Depp discussing his divorce settlement from Ms. Heard, right? Erin, as I said before, I remember the settlement. You probably know better than I do. I believe that it was in reference to the divorce settlement, but I'm not positive. Did you consider Ms. Heard to be a true domestic violence victim? Oh, Mr. McKenna, if you recall what your thought process was during that time frame, you can let her know. Erin, I don't recall. Can we go to the next page? And specifically, I think these are on the same page. Text messages between you and Mr. Depp on August 18th, 2018 that are entries 138 to 140. So if you could just take a moment and read through those. Okay, do you remember this exchange with Mr. Depp? Erin, no, I do not. Do you have any understanding of what you're discussing here with Mr. Depp? Erin, I don't recall those specific texts, so it would be speculating. In entry 140, you write, I didn't think she would give all the money to charity. I guess that's for the press. Do you see that? Erin, I'm sorry, you said, 40, yes, I see that. Do you know who the she is that you're referring to? Erin, I would assume, based on the discussion, Miss Heard, but I'm not positive. And do you know what money you're referring to? Erin, I don't recall, but my assumption is it says the entire settlement, so I'm assuming the $7 million that was discussed in the last slide. We're almost done, I promise. At the time, do you have strike that? At the time, strike that as well. Do you recall at the time why you didn't think that Miss Heard would have given her divorce settlement to charity? If you have a recollection of your thought process at the time, please share it with her. Erin, nope. If we can just go to a quick break, I'm done. Okay, she's done. And so they went off the record, then they came back on the record. Miss Felati, do you remember when you were treating Miss Heard that at some point she had a cyst on her eyelid? Erin, yep, sounds familiar. And do you remember that she had a procedure to have that cyst removed? Erin, yes. And was that a surgical procedure to your recollection? Erin, from what I recall, that was handled at an outpatient surgical center. Other than that, I don't know the details of that specific process. Do you recall approximately what time she had that procedure performed? Erin, the time of day? No, like what month or year? Erin, no, I don't recall, but in reviewing my notes, I believe I discussed that. Or perhaps an email to Dr. Kipper so I can go through the documents and find the date for you if you'd like. You don't need to do that. But do you recall the date being reflected in the email to Dr. Kipper? Erin, yep, that sounds correct. Okay. Do you recall whether Miss Heard had any marks around her eye after having that procedure? Erin, I don't recall. I remember a topical ointment being applied, but I don't recall if there was marks on her eye or not. I have no further questions. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you and your family are recovered. Oh, they had a little cold. Mr. Nadelhaft, Erin, do I have a couple? I do have a couple follow-up questions. Mr. Nadelhaft, okay, can you put back up Felati 17? Mr. Nadelhaft, and can we just scroll right down on Felati? Do you see Felati 93? Erin, oh, you're asking if I see it? Yeah. Do you see Felati 93? Erin, yeah, I do. Okay. This is another picture of Amber from May 21st, 2016. It was a different pages, so that's why I'm asking. I didn't show her these pages. Mr. McKenna, is that Amber? Erin, correct. This is a picture of Miss Heard. And Amber sent you this text on May 21st, 2016. Erin, I believe so, based on the timestamp. Okay, and that same picture, and the same for this picture on the next page. Amber sent you this picture of her. Erin, correct. And the same for this page, the next page. Amber sent you this picture of her on May 21st. Erin, yep. Okay, we can take that down. When you saw Amber on on December 17th, 2015, and you spoke about that, how long were you with her? Do you recall? Erin, I don't recall. I would assume based on the fact that I had stopped briefly, maybe an hour or two. Okay, did you go inside her house or were you just outside the door? Erin, from what I recall, I was inside. The penthouse, yeah. Mr. Nadelhaft, put up another attachment 13. Okay, by the way, when you saw Amber on December 17th, was she wearing makeup or not? Do you recall? Erin, I don't recall. Okay, I'm showing you what's been marked Felati Exhibit 18. This is a text message chain between you and Amber. Do you see that? Erin, yeah. And again, this is your phone number. Erin, that's my phone number. Okay, and you wrote, just thinking of you and checking in. How are you holding up? Do you recall sending this text? Erin, no, I don't recall sending that specific text. And then Amber wrote, so sad and confused and scared. Shit, I mean, how can I miss him? And then you wrote, because he's your husband, the man you vowed to love until death do you part. Of course you love him. You had a bad argument that went sideways. That is part of what needs to be corrected. The love will always be there for one another. Do you see that? Erin, yep, I do see that. Do you recall how the argument went sideways? Erin, I don't recall. I would have to look through my notes to give you a better answer. Okay, and we looked through those notes. So other than what's on your notes, you don't have any other recollection of what your testimony, correct? Erin, correct. Okay, we can take that down. Did you ever hear anything of Mr. Depp ever throwing anything at Amber? Erin, I don't recall that. Did you ever hear anything about Mr. Depp yelling at Amber? Erin, I recall hearing from Miss Heard that there were arguments, in which case she would say that Mr. Depp would yell and would also admit to yelling. I think they were both yelling. Is your testimony that Amber did report to you that she was abused by Mr. Depp, correct? Erin, she reported, as you just said before that, I lose track of the dates, but whatever the date that she said, that's what it's called, headbutted her. And you also testified in question that friends were reiterating the statement that Amber was abused by Mr. Depp. Do you recall that testimony? Erin, yep, I recall that. Do you know what friends? Erin, I can't say for certain, but I would assume, oh gosh, what's her name? Rocky, just because she lived nearby, just, within the penthouses. Mr. McKenna, that's a guess? Erin, it is a guess. Mr. McKenna, you were asked if you remember. Erin, oh, if I remember for certain? Mr. McKenna, not even for certain. Either you remember or you don't remember. Erin, no. So Mr. Nadelhaft wants to ask again. Do you recall any of the friends that reiterated the statement that Amber was abused by Mr. Depp? Erin, I'm sorry, Adam, can you say that again? Do I recall the specific friends? Isn't that... Yeah, Adam. Yeah, you mentioned friends. Do you recall any of the friends, the names of the friends? Erin, her friends that were around often were her sister. And they're just, oh my God, they're having it out. Mr. McKenna, again, not the question. Mr. Nadelhaft, Robert. Mr. McKenna, excuse me? Nadelhaft, she can answer the question. Now and then poor girl couldn't catch it. Mr. McKenna, no. Mr. Nadelhaft, just let her answer the question. You didn't say anything. Mr. McKenna, you know what? Mr. Nadelhaft, during the time when she was answering. Mr. McKenna, you know what? Mr. Nadelhaft, the question for Jessica. Mr. McKenna, she's not answering your question. Mr. Nadelhaft, I mean, come on, she's answering the question. Mr. McKenna, she's not answering your question. Mr. Nadelhaft, you can't keep, Mr. McKenna, you gotta let her answer the question. I'm trying to explain to her what the question is. Mr. Nadelhaft, no, why? Come on. Mr. McKenna, take control. Mr. Nadelhaft, you're not letting her answer the question. Mr. McKenna, take a breath and we'll get to your question. Oh, Mr. Nadelhaft, why are you? Mr. McKenna, your question is a group of people. She's not answering it. Mr. Nadelhaft, well, then let her answer and then I can decide. Miss Meyers, I'm trying to focus her on the answer. Mr. Nadelhaft, if I want to ask her another question. Mr. McKenna, so if you hang tight for a minute, I think we can accomplish that, all right? Mr. Nadelhaft, Mr. McKenna, can we have the question read back? The question is, do you remember who those people are, not who they likely are or who they may be, who they are? Mr. Nadelhaft, I object to you. Mr. McKenna, that's all you're being asked. Mr. Nadelhaft, coaching her like you're doing. I'm not sure. She can decide. I can decide if she's answered the question or not. It's my question. Mr. McKenna, Adam, you know what? I'm tired of hearing advice, so let's get this depo done. Get the question out. Mr. Nadelhaft, this would be the last question if you just let her answer it. Mr. McKenna, great. Read the question back. Have her answer, and then that will be it. Mr. Nadelhaft, no, stop. I don't understand why you're being like this. I don't get it. Mr. McKenna, okay, so it's not. Mr. Nadelhaft, I don't understand at all why you're being like this. Mr. McKenna, would you just be quiet long enough? Mr. Nadelhaft, would I be quiet? Mr. McKenna, for the court reporter to read the question back. Mr. Nadelhaft, you were talking over her. Mr. McKenna, will you be quiet? Mr. Nadelhaft, she was answering the question and you stopped. Mr. McKenna, long enough to let the court reporter read the question back. Mr. Nadelhaft, I object to everything you did, but go ahead, read the question back. Mr. McKenna, well, feelings mutual. Mr. Nadelhaft, I don't understand why you're against what I've said. Mr. McKenna, do you have some problem just being quiet for a minute? Can you let the court reporter read the question back? Mr. Nadelhaft, you're the same, Robert. You are the same. Oh, fuck, Nadelhaft, it doesn't mean it's right. Mr. McKenna, for crying out loud, just take a little bit of control on yourself. I think you can do it. Mr. Nadelhaft, oh my God. Mr. McKenna, let's have the court reporter read it back. Ooh. Okay, so Mr. Nadelhaft, let me ask it again. Again, do you recall any of the names of the friends that reiterated that Amber was abused by Mr. Depp? Jessica, objection calls for hearsay. Erin, I have a vague sense of her friends reiterating the statement as to which friends said it onto which occasion. I can't give you an answer. Mr. Nadelhaft, without telling which occasions, do you know which friend said something to you reiterating that Amber was abused by Mr. Depp? Erin, I recall at some point I.O., I believe her sister, her name is Whitney, and I believe Rocky. I don't recall their last name. Mr. Nadelhaft, all right, thank you very much. I have no further questions. Oh, and they're done. And so, Mr. Nadelhaft, I do want to make this deposition confidential, so we're just making an entire deposition confidential. Mr. McKenna, whatever agreement you have in place, if I'm not aware of them, I'll agree to them. And the deposition will be handled as such. Oh my God. Fuck me. And it's still not confidential. After all that, it's still not confidential. And really, we got nothing. All those hours, and we pretty much got nothing because Erin remembered nothing. Now, here's the thing. I can't remember 4 years from I can't remember last year. I can't remember conversations I had. I would need notes as well. And I know a lot of people think, oh, well, because it's Depp and her, you'd remember. Now, this was just her regular day. I don't think she'd remember. I've dealt with people that I probably should remember, and I just don't remember, the things. So anyway, she was no fucking help, but a lot of good questions were raised by Jessica that makes one think they had the answer. All right, that's it. That's all. Have a great day. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you guys next time.